Thank you for joining us on our journey here to preserve the history of mixed martial arts. When I wanted to take on this project, I needed help. I brought in one of my favorite matchmakers, Miguel Geraghty, and the MMA detective, Mike Davis. So to do this, we've been able to preserve history. Welcome and enjoy. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Lights Out Podcast fan members here. Thank you for listening, paying attention. This is our favorite thing we do, deep dives. Yes, deep dives with my guys, people from my era, which is what I like. Old school guys, real fighters. I don't care about these fake people now. This is an athletic contest. These were people who fought. Another 50 fight, club member right here, Brian Geraghty. Brian, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Man, couldn't be doing any better right now. Get to hang out with my buddies sometimes here and bug the piss out of people for a couple hours. That's what we're gonna do. So
I don't think I've seen you in probably 8 years.
It's been that long?
I think so. I think the last time I seen you was on a show in Indiana. One of my friends was fighting, and I cornered him, and I remember you being there. And I think that that was about 8 years ago.
Man, here's the bad thing. Like, time flies so much anymore. I would have probably said 3. You know, it's like somebody would be like, talking about their kid. I'm like, how old's your kid now? 5? They're like 18. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Everything go well between 5 and 18.
I mean, I'm bad with time. I'm like, has it been that long? Yeah, Chris. Okay, well, whatever. So, all right.
Everything good though? Okay, yeah.
He's got 2 DUIs. Oh, okay. So not good. All right. So how we usually do it, Miguel chimes in and has a lot of great information. Mike does all the real inquisitive stuff. He really does the deep dive part of it and nerds out on it, and then we do too. But we like to blame it on Mike. So Mike, what you got for us, brother?
Yeah, we let Mike kind of run the interview because if not, you got to see him. His OCD goes wild. So
Brian, 15 years of interviewing people, and then you get a guy like Miguel that's got like a little bit of ADHD, except his information is really good, but it never goes in chronological order.
Yeah.
It's like a Tarantino movie.
It makes me want to slam my head in the door. That's the truth.
I can relate.
And with Chris, like Chris and I, and Miguel, we're actual friends. So we go on these little deep dives and little niche subjects. And you're a friend. So we could tell you this. So essentially we tell Chris, hey, Chris, look at this little nerdy fact or look at that nerdy fact. And Chris goes, oh, yeah. Nail it. We kind of play it off like Chris isn't a part of us of taking up as much time of your time as possible, but he is. Okay. He's just, and this we're okay, but with other people, like with Walt Harris, a couple months ago, Chris was like, yeah, it's kind of him. Sorry.
Yeah.
But that's how it goes. So Brian, you've been around the sport a long time. Your first recorded fight is August 23rd of 2000. It was Steve Berger, and you lost by armbar in round 1.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough fight.
Was there any recorded fights previous to that, or was that your actual first one?
My very first fight, which I don't know if it was recorded, it was in Chicago at Madonna High School, which is no longer there. I guess they rolled the whole high school over a few years after that. And I think it was for Joel Goitia. I think it was for him. Yeah. And I don't remember the guy's name. I think his first name was Muhammad. I just know he was a training partner of Jason Chambers. And
you fought Eric Muhammad?
I think his first name was Muhammad. I thought his first name was Muhammad.
Shaved head, real built. He
wasn't black. He was Middle Eastern.
No. Okay. Yeah. No. I mean, there's a couple guys that go by Muhammad. All right, so you had one fight previous. Did you win or lose that bout?
I won that fight by TKO, and that was it was one of those fights where there weren't rounds. You just fought for, I think it was 15 minutes or something, and I TKO'd him 8 minutes in.
Horrible.
That's bad. Okay, so Chris and Miguel, when we talk about historic Midwest fights, the one thing that we always like to point out is the Steve Berger, Aaron Riley hook and shoot bout, so Chris, we always talk about the mad genius of Jeff Osborne with hook and shoot and stuff like that. And Steve Berger fights him in 4 days. Steve fights Aaron Riley, which is an all-out war, like the Gotti Ward of the indie scene. 4 days later, he's headlining against Brian Geraghty on a Brian Madden show.
That's how it was in the old school, dude. I mean,
Well,
we were
how
young.
does
We
that-
didn't need rest.
How does that fight kind of come together?
Are you asking me now?
Yes. Yeah. No,
Okay,
Miguel,
so I
Miguel
didn't-
needs to sit. Yeah.
I didn't know I was going to be fighting. I went with Mike Delaney, who was going to be fighting his partner, Mike Rogers, Steve Rogers. He was a heavyweight.
Mike Rogers from St. Louis.
Yeah.
Okay, so Delaney was fighting Rogers that night. I was going along for the ride. So I had been drinking all day long the night before, and we get to the event, and Mike Delaney comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, you got to do something." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Wow, you got to fight." And I'm like, "What?" You know, and I'm brand spanking new to the sport. And Mike Delaney's my sensei, so in reality I don't know how to fight. No offense to Mike Delaney, but I don't know what I'm doing. But I'm 19, 20 years old, and they're like, "You want a couple $100 to fight?" Oh yeah. $200 to go to work for 10 minutes, whatever. Yeah. I didn't know who Steve Berger was, so it didn't mean nothing to me when they said you're fighting Steve Berger. That didn't mean anything to me. I'm just like, okay.
Well, it was a main event
$200,
too, right?
Yeah.
Was it the main event?
I don't remember. It was close. It was later in the night, But again, I didn't know. I didn't know what that meant. What point you're at in the card? If that meant if it was a big fight or little fight. It was just. They told me $200, so I'm gonna do it.
He fought Steve Berger for $200.
Hey,
Yeah.
It's a good thing you were drinking all day too, because that calmed the nerves down a little bit. You know what I mean?
So my anxiety was pretty low at the point, and I didn't care. I just thought, well, it's a good thing I brought some shorts with. So,
How'd the fight go? How'd it go?
I just remember, I was kind of drunk. So my recollection was, we threw we had a couple exchanges on the feet. Nobody did nothing special. He took me down. The one thing I remember, because this was when I first started fighting, I liked wearing the tie shorts. Remember the baggy type tie kickboxing? I liked those because I thought they looked cool. And that was the last time I wore tie shorts, because what happened was when Steve took me down, he knotted up my tie shorts and punched his fist to the ground. So then I couldn't move my lower body because he had me by the shorts. And I was like, that's not fair, But Steve came from a gi background, so he knew how to, do that stuff with his gi jiu-jitsu background. And I was just like a scrappy kid, training Mike Delaney Kwon Do at the time. So I didn't know what I was doing, and I ended up getting armbarred. And I just remember just popping up with a smile on my face. I was like, well, I'm getting $200 and I'm not hurt. So now we can go out and have fun, so it wasn't a big deal.
How did you meet Mike Delaney then? And how does he become your sensei?
Okay. So I had always been interested in learning jiu-jitsu since I was 13 years old. When the UFCs came out, my brother used to go to Blockbuster and rent the UFCs and Faces of Death. So we'd watch those. My brother wasn't. My brother was a strange character. He liked watching people get hurt. So I just liked jiu-jitsu. I was like, wow, that's really cool. So years down the road, my buddy tells me, hey, I started training jiu-jitsu with this guy I lifted with at the gym. And I'm like, oh, really? So I went in and I started training with those guys. It was Mike Delaney and this guy named Rick. And
Rick
I didn't know
Raverson?
any better, so I'm just like, oh, you guys do jiu-jitsu here? And they're like, yeah. And I remember asking them, I'm like, well, what are you guys, black belts? What belt? And they both kind of chuckled like, ha, 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 we don't need belts, we know what we're doing. So I'm just like, all right, yeah, I guess, they were better than me. So I took their word for it.
Was it Rick Raverson?
No, I can't think of his late. He didn't fight or anything. He just trained, and he was a nice guy, but they were just, we were just a couple of guys grappling in a karate school. Delaney had gotten kicked out of Strasser's for training people at this gym. I didn't know who Strasser was. And so I was just working out at this karate gym with this guy, Mike Delaney. That's all I knew.
Miguel,
No,
go ahead.
I realized what I did is, and it's interesting that you started out with Delaney and then moved to Strasser because,
I didn't move to Strasser's after that. I was at a few different gyms in between there.
So, because at the end, Strasser's one of those guys with an old school mentality where it's like, not just anybody can go train there. I think, he's probably got an initiation and he wants to make sure you're a pretty tough guy. So I know you made it through that. How, we're going to talk about who your other training partners are. I know Delaney also, he's a heavyweight and, sometimes he was his own worst enemy, overthinking fights beforehand. That's what I remember about him. Like he'd get nervous beforehand. And, overall, he scrapped a few times for us, though.
When I started training with Delaney, he was, obviously a big name around town, and he was pretty good. He was a pretty good heavyweight for that era. Not a lot of guys. It was hard to get him fights. Not a lot of people wanted to fight him. He did have some wins over some decent guys back then, and so the one thing I remember about him is one night me and Delaney went out. We went out in Kenosha. And some guy comes up to us and it got word out that Delaney was the fighter and me and him were MMA guys. So this guy comes up to us and says that he fights too. And so we're talking to him and then he introduces himself to us and he says, and I shit you not, I'm Mike Delaney, to Mike Delaney. And we're just like, what? But that's who Mike Delaney was back then.
Well,
he was
wait a minute.
Wow.
Brian,
Yeah.
Did you think that maybe your Mike Delaney may have been lying to you and that guy was telling the truth?
Now looking back on it, yes. I trained with the wrong Mike Delaney.
That guy might have been awesome.
Chris,
I'd have to look up Delaney's record, see who he fought. But I remember
Miguel, you gotta check this out. So I got UFC Fight Pass, like when I do research on these guys. So I see Mike Delaney at Extreme Challenge 3. Like Mike Delaney's an old school cat.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yes.
He's fighting in a Megadeth shirt and he doesn't take it off.
Yeah, no, it's actually better. It's actually better. Like the promoter may have asked him to not take it off. It's like put the shirt back off.
I think it was like Extreme Challenge 5. He had like a Kill 'Em All shirt on, and he won't take it off. Like he's fighting with his death metal shirts on,
and he had a tongue po haircut. It was really long. It was just like a patch that was really long in the back.
I don't remember who I put him in against one time, but I went up to the dude and I was like, dude, just don't tie kick him in that massive varicose veins he's got in the back of his leg because that shit could pop on me. So please don't do it.
Medical bills.
So your first fight, obviously, Steve Berger, you lose by armbar. Your second fight is at the Silverbacks Classic against Nate Brooks. So were you a little bit more prepared at this point, or were you just still kind of off and on at the gym?
No, like I said, I didn't know what I was doing at all. I mean, if me today was talking to me back then, I'd be like, you have no business whatsoever going in that ring. No business.
How did you? Okay, so now your third fight is against Shaggy, Justin Wieman, who actually had a decent record. Like he was actually, and he lost by, Chris, he loses by headlock.
Good move. Tough move, man. I mean,
I lost 2 fights. I'm pretty sure I lost 2 fights in the beginning by headlock. I don't think that was the only one. Like I said, I had no idea how to grapple. No idea.
Okay, so I mean, how far apart are these fights? Are they all pretty quick?
They're pretty close. Yeah, August 23rd was the first one on record. He probably had one a few weeks before that with the Joe Goiti event, and the Justin Wieman was November 15th. So he's got 3 months, 3 fights. Actually, like 4 months, probably 4 fights.
Okay. So I got a question. So in your mind right now, are you thinking, man, maybe this sport isn't for me, or because losing's tough, man. I mean, are you just thinking, I really don't know what I'm doing here yet? I need to keep training. What was going on in your mindset?
It was back then. This was just something to keep me busy and out of trouble.
Okay.
This wasn't like anything that I planned on being a career or taken seriously. This was just something I was having fun doing. I know when I started training, I didn't plan on fighting. Delaney kind of talked me into it a little bit. Hey, you should maybe think about fight. I didn't plan. I wanted to learn jiu-jitsu, really, is what I wanted to do. And I was kind of a troublemaker coming up, and I needed to do something kind of to change my life around. And this was it. You know, it wasn't something I thought I was going to make a career out of this. This was something, hey, I need a hobby, you know, and this is going to be my hobby.
When did you start kind of taking it a little bit more serious, or is that down the road, Mike? Whatever. I mean,
down the road a few years. What happened is, you know, I had some fights around here, and then every once in a while, Delaney and I would travel up to Adrian Serrano's to train. And
I remember.
And you know, and Adrian had some tough guys, and I would go up there and I'd get beat up a little bit and be like, okay, you know, and I would learn a lot up there, but it just didn't feel like it was enough. So what happened is my brother was in the Marines out in California, and he had called me and he said, hey, there's a gym out here that people are living in. You could move out here and you could live in it and train. And so he sends me the guy's highlight tape, the trainer, and I watched his highlight tape and I'm amazed. And that guy's Chris Brennan, which I'm sure most of you guys know.
Yeah, the West Side Strangler. Yeah.
There it is. There it is. Good.
So that's when I started taking it seriously, when I moved out there. And
okay, so you said you left Delaney's gym for somewhere else.
That's where I left it to go. I left Delaney's to go. I moved to California into Chris Brennan's gym.
Yeah, but you kind of said you were looking for a hobby. That's not a hobby move, like, you know, moving across the country. You know what I mean?
Okay.
You move across the country.
Now
and like you said,
let me give you some context here, Miguel.
Yep.
Pump the brakes. I'm going to give you some context.
Thank you,
like
Brian.
I said, I was a troublemaker, okay? The day I had to get out of this area because I was just going to be doing the same stuff I was doing. The day I moved out to California was the day I got off probation. I had to get out of here.
Were you like stealing cable?
Huh? Stealing cable?
Yeah. That HBO Max got you?
Something like that, yeah.
All right, so you go live with Brennan. At what point, though? Like, at what fight was that? Because
I had been training for 2 years. So remember, you had brought up I fought one of the Brooks brothers.
Yes, Nate Brooks.
So I had fought his brother, the older brother, and I actually beat the older brother.
You're talking about Bill Brooks, January 29, 2001.
Yes. So after that is when I moved to California.
Okay, so that's when you got your first recorded win. You know, it's your second actual win.
Really? Because I did have a few fights that obviously are not recorded that I won in between there.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking at January 29th. You're saying a couple fights. Your fight against Justin Wieman was November 15th. So there's not like a lot of, you're talking about 1 month and a half in between.
Maybe I don't know, but Delaney had put on a local show here that probably didn't get recorded. Him and this guy, John Prinsby. And, you know, I fought on that and beat some guy. And there were some other smaller shows that we'd go around and, you know, who knows? Like I said, you know, Chris will tell you, you know, there's fights that you had no idea. I probably don't even remember some of these fights that I had that weren't recorded. Yeah, really.
Did you ever make the trip down to Iowa for, like, you know, Fulton's, you know, Tuesday night fights or any of those shows?
No, I the only time I fought in Iowa was later in my career when I was fighting.
Don Strong.
I had the belt for, what was that show called?
Pinnacle Combat.
Pinnacle. I fought there a handful of times. I was a lightweight champ for like 2 years.
Yeah, you fought Wisely. I think you lost to Wisely. You lost to Wisely.
That was my very last fight.
Okay.
Was against Wisely.
Yeah, let's give it back to Mike and get back in order.
Wait, Miguel. Wait, hold up. Miguel, check this out. Where do you think he fought the Brooks brothers at? What Southern Illinois show?
Is that Randy?
It was on Phil John's Silverback's Classics, I think they called it, right?
There it is.
All right, former champion. Is that Bob Long and Phil doing the show?
Yeah,
Phil John.
Yeah. So, what was it like dealing with Phil and Bob Long at those shows?
I love those guys. They were
too.
like, you know, they were just like two characters, and they were like yin and yang, but they worked great together. You know, they were. I don't know. I got a kick out of Bob Long. I got a kick out of Phil Johns. I really liked it. You know, their hometown is a little scary though. Canton, Illinois. It was
not a lot of teeth. Not a lot of teeth in that city.
And here, can I break off on a side story about Canton, Illinois?
Please.
Absolutely.
So, again, Delaney and I would go up to Milwaukee to train with Serrano. So one night Serrano calls me. He's like, hey, I need you to go down with two of my fighters to Canton, Illinois to corner them on Phil John's show. And I'm just like, sure, if they give me a ride. So they're like, yeah, they'll pick you up tomorrow. So it's Rob Smith. Do you remember Rob Smith?
Oh, of course, dude. Yeah, he fought Rampage. Yeah. I know Rob.
So it's Rob Smith and another fighter. I can't remember.
Terry Martin too.
Huh? Yeah,
he fought Terry Martin as well.
Rich Franklin.
He fought some really tough guys. Yeah, Rob Smith's legit.
It was
500
him,
record.
Yeah, it was Rob Smith and another fighter. I can't remember. He only fought for not too long. It was another guy. Now, Rob Smith, for context, Rob Smith and the other fighter are both black gentlemen. Okay, and we're headed down to Canton, Illinois. So,
what's the issue?
Well,
nothing.
Right?
Canton,
Illinois. What's the issue? So we get to Canton, Illinois, and the other fighter, I can't think of his name right now. He was the first of the Milwaukee guys to fight. So he gets in the ring. They do the announcements. They're about to say fight, and you hear out of the crowd, "Kick that bleep's ass!" And it was like, no. And I'm like horrified, and I turn and look. Rob Smith is already halfway in the crowd after this guy, and it was like,
Rob Smith is not somebody you want going after you, man.
Absolutely not.
Rob Smith can fight.
They end up grabbing the guy and kicking him out, and thank God. Rob and the other guy, they end up fighting. They both end up winning, and they gave us a hotel room next to the bar. They used to do it at that bar outside, and they were like, "Nope, we're leaving tonight." And I'm like, "I don't blame you guys. I'm with you. Let's get the hell out of here." So that's Canton, Illinois. Now, obviously, Phil Johns and Bob Long aren't those guys, though. They aren't them at all. They're good people, but.
It does exist down there for sure. And the thing about like Bob Long and Phil Johns, like you've got MMA gyms that have existed for decades, and they've never gotten somebody to the the highest levels of the sport, like the UFC. And now you got Bob Long in small little tiny Canton, Illinois, where he gets Derek Noble, Kenny Robertson, and Phil Johns, 3 people all the way to the UFC. Which is incredible.
It is incredible. From that small of a and that night I fought the Brooks brother when I won which one was the one I beat? Bill?
You beat Bill Brooks.
Okay. So when I fought Bill Brooks, that's when Phil Johns got his call up to the UFC. Ooh. So he came, huh?
That's awesome.
Go ahead. We're listening.
So he came into the ring to announce it. But the funny part was, he announced it double fisting beers in his own show that he was promoting. And of course, you know how that went. He went on to get armbarred by Fabiano Iha,
a minute.
And the story behind Fabiano Iha was he left Brazil a purple belt, landed in America a black belt.
But how else are you supposed to, announce? I think double fist is the right way to do it.
Well, let me ask you, Brian.
I was going to say I don't see anything wrong with double fist.
Well, there is. Brian's leaving out a very important detail. Did he have like Doc Martens with flames on the bottom of them when he made this announcement?
That's a problem.
There's a good possibility.
Yeah, no, that's
100%.
He had the matching.
He wasn't a singlet.
Wow.
He was wearing a singlet though. He did.
Was he really?
No. Not when you put your face on now. I disagree.
That's the BS part, Chris. Good call.
Yeah.
Good call.
I sniffed that one out.
All right, so you're obviously at the Silverbacks Classic. You kind of become a regular on that show, and that's kind of a far drive for you. It's like a 4.5 hour drive, coming from Milwaukee. And on January 29th, 2002, you get your second win. Like you armbarred, you decision Bill Brooks, Shane Danielson, you armbar, and then you also armbar Ron Wilson in the second round. So your jiu-jitsu game has really stepped up until this point. Where do you attribute that to?
Ron Wilson. When I fought Ron Wilson, when was that?
That was 2002, June 29th.
That's when I came back from California. I think he was like my first fight back from California. So I got my blue belt in jiu-jitsu from Chris Brennan, which back then a blue belt in this area was pretty good.
Real good.
Yeah.
Now, were you with, when did Brennan compete at Abu Dhabi? Was that, I think it was 2003, right? Or later?
That was way after me, I think. Because he fought, that's when he fought who in Abu Dhabi? He fought,
I know this one. It's sad. I feel bad for him because
he fought the
was it Marcelo?
Guy.
Yeah, he fought
Marcelo Garcia.
The first round.
Did he win?
He actually came.
He got armbarred.
There's a committee people.
Yeah.
There's a committee of people that choose it, and it's pretty fair. But I was kind of like one of the people on the committee that was known. So like he came up to me, and was like, anybody but Garcia, and they're pulling names out of a hat, and it turns out to be him and Garcia, and I was like, fuck, I'm gonna have to talk to that guy, you know?
Oh, jeez.
He's gonna come looking for me.
He was hurt from that, physically hurt from that fight, because when we went to fight in Hawaii, he was questioning whether he wanted to fight or not because he had popped his rib in that match. And I kind of talked him into fighting. I'm like, look, man, they're gonna pay you a lot of money to do this fight. I'm like, just do it. You know what I mean? What the hell did I wasn't a doctor. What the hell did I know?
The voice of reason.
So on the undercard, I noticed you've got Ryan Ackerman and Ron Faircloth. So is this when the Dave Strasser transition comes into play?
With Faircloth?
You got Ron Faircloth on
me?
the undercard.
No. I didn't know those guys. I didn't know them.
So did you meet them at that event?
No, I think I met them at an event in Kenosha. I don't know if it was before or after that, but I didn't talk to them guys at all there. I didn't know them at all.
So that was 2003. Okay. So in between then, he travels to Cage Rage out in Indiana and fights Darrell Smith.
Yeah.
Yes. That was set up on my end by Adrian Serrano. And it was like on a Tuesday, and he's like, hey, this guy dropped out of this fight. You want to go fight Saturday down it was Kokomo, Indiana.
Kokomo.
I'm like, sure, you know. And back then, like, you couldn't look up who these guys were. I'm like, well, like, what is this guy good at? Well, his nickname's the Bulldog, and that's kind of what he does. So I'm just like, all right.
What, he like bites people? What does that mean?
Scratches.
Here's the
crazy part about that fight was that's when MRSA was kind of going around up here. I had 5 MRSA infections on one of my legs, and I was sicker than a dog. And looking back on it, like I said, it was stupid to even take a fight on that short notice, but it was even dumber to do it with having infections on my leg, which not only I could have died from, but then I could have passed on to Darrell, you know what I mean? It was a bad idea.
In the cage.
So on a side note, Darrell Smith.
Is that Rothwell's MRSA?
Who to what now?
Was that the same strain that got Rothwell? Because Rothwell's the one who had it bad up there.
Yes.
Oh, wow. So on that, Darrell Smith, actually, the crazy thing about him, he's got like an under 500 record. He's also got a win over Bart Pelazewski.
When did they fight, Bart?
He caught both you guys in the beginning, and then you guys like kind of kept at it. He did like the Floyd Mayweather approach. He sees a young up and coming guy, he jumps on him quick. Yeah, I'll fight him now, before he gets any real training.
Yeah. Like I wasn't I wasn't the smartest when it came to my career. If somebody said, hey, you want to fight tomorrow? I'd just think, yeah, sure. I didn't really think of it as like, I got to worry about my career in MMA here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was just kind of like, I'm just going to fight.
50 Fight Club member.
Probably not, but am I going to do it? Yeah. So, I mean, if you look at my record, we can go fight for fight, and I can guarantee you at least 50% of my fights were weak notice fights. Cause then I got that kind of, that's why I got kind of, this guy will fight anybody at any time. So that's what I became,
And I remember having back then this would happen. I remember showing up to a fight to watch some friends fight, and they go, hey, such and such dropped out. Do you want to take it? Okay. And I was like, I don't have any shorts. All you can use mine. I don't have a cup. I think I didn't even wear a cup when I was like, I forget it. Hopefully, I won't get in the nuts. You know.
Yeah.
All right. I think they had a mouthpiece. It's just like, yeah, all right, do it.
That's how I fought Steve Berger. I just showed up there to, hang out with Mike Delaney and Sensei Delaney, and he talked me into fighting Steve Berger.
Did he?
And I think at the time, like, he was ranked like 11th in the world or something. I found out afterwards. And I'm like, huh. I'm like, Mike, looking back, that's probably a bad idea.
A couple more dollars. Yeah, could at least got another 100.
It's 300. I want 300 bucks to fight.
Yeah.
All right, so January 11, 2003, Chris, he fights one of your all-time favorite fighters on a freestyle combat challenge. He fights Tom Kirk.
My grandma died when I was 10 years old. Mike, do you want to bring that up too?
Yeah, dude, it's unfortunate. We just kind of go through these, dude. We go through every bump in a row.
Tommy Kirk.
So what we usually do is we get you guys wound up, and then we just do a full-on shoot interview. So we're working our way towards that, Brian. Yeah. So Tom Kirk, who was managed by Mike Camp, I might add. What, Chris?
Okay,
I'm just saying.
Time out. Hey, Chris.
Yo.
Is it true that Mike Camp sent you a dead rat in the mail?
That was not me. He said that to somebody else. So that was a true story. I remember it wasn't me though. I can't remember who it was, but I mean, dude, Mike's done a lot of crazy stuff, dude.
Was it like, did he watch The Godfather one too many times?
I don't know, but here's another one that Mike Camp did. Him and Chaz Bowling get like a fight in the ring. After one of the other fights, I think Camp ran over in his face, and he got slapped. So they're going nuts. Pandemonium erupts.
Chaz Bowling slapped. Wait, Chaz Bowling slapped Mike Camp.
Yeah. Like,
why is this the first time you're telling me about this? We talk every day.
So pandemonium erupts, everything. Jason gets it all calmed down. The 8 seconds lives.
Jason Godsey. Okay.
Yeah. So then I hear from Chaz Boylan while he's like, man, your guy's crazy. I'm like, my guy, which he's like, I go home and on my answer machine, he's like, this is Mike Camp. I'm going to hide in the bushes. When you and your family come out, I'm going to jump out and I'm going to kill everyone. So I'm like, dude,
no way.
He left on their answer machine. So Chaz like sends it to the police. He's like, dude, what kind of person leaves a message? It's like, this is Mike. He left his name and everything, dude. It's like, come on, Mike.
MP, just for the police, in case they don't know.
Yeah, wow. So he did stuff like that. And I can't remember who did he send that dead rat to. It might have been Leo Sylvester. He sent it to somebody. I can't remember.
Oh, it was Leo was the first guy that he managed. Holy shit. I can't believe I remember this. So the first guy Mike managed was Leo Sylvester. And when Leo went outside of Mike Camp was when that all went down. Oh my God, Brian, how do you even remember? How do I forget it? That's a phenomenal story.
Yeah. Mike was mad at me for a while, but I think we're good now. Yeah.
I think I can actually top with an MMA guy a story of a guy like leaving evidence. This dude got mad at a guy, actually went home, and it was a little funny. He went to fight this guy at his house wearing Venom shorts and gloves. They're Viper shorts and gloves. The dude wasn't there. He broke into his house. And waiting for him, he fell asleep on his couch. And when the guy got home, he called the cops on him. That happened.
Are we going to put names to this story, Miguel?
Yeah, it's MMA.
I can't fucking hear a thing Miguel's saying. Can
Miguel, you guys speak into your microphone, brother.
It's Chad Bartlett is the MMA veteran.
Charles Barkley didn't fight anybody. Come on.
The Chuck Wagon.
So anyway, let's get back on track, Mike. But yeah, there's a little tidbit on Chad Bartlett getting arrested.
So when Brian gets beat by Tom Kirk,
I got knocked out. Thanks for bringing it up.
Guess who's on the undercard, Miguel?
Who's that?
Solomon Hutcherson.
Oh, that's a name that'll come up again here.
So, Brian, what are you doing? Are you going to your cabinet? Are you trying to get your kids' lunch ready for school? What are we doing?
I'm making some Turkish coffee.
Okay. All right.
So Solomon Hutcherson, which is like a super interesting career.
I remember him.
Give us a little insight on what it was like working out with him, Brian.
Solomon was an animal. And the thing about Solomon, though, is I don't know what went on in his personal life, but he wasn't a fan of coming in to train. So he would have a fight on Dave's show, right? And I was always trying to work out. So even if Dave had a show on a Saturday night, if the gym was open Friday, I'd be there working out. Well, that was Solomon's time to go train for his fight, Friday night before this fight on Saturday. So it would be me and Solomon rolling for like an hour and a half. You know, we'd be the only two there. And that's how we got ready for a fight, you know, be puking, coming back in, we do another round, you know, and then he'd go out there and he'd fight tough. Like he fought Rob Smith. He fought a lot of tough guys.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
He really didn't train for any of these fights.
Man.
He was just, you know, he was a decent wrestler and he was a, you know, a tough kid.
I remember him, yeah.
He made the Ultimate
at
Fighter.
This point,
too.
are you working out with Dave Strasser at this point?
Yes. When I came back from California, I was going between Milwaukee and Chicago, training with Serrano and with Assou Hamdaoui, who's my favorite MMA character ever. And then I got sick of all the traveling, so I finally like someone brought up, it's hard to go train with Dave's. He's got to make sure that he knows that you're like the right type of person. I was working out with Aguilar like here and there, so Aguilar talked Dave into letting me come train with those guys.
Now, Assou Hamdaoui is like a leg lock specialist.
Favorite guy ever. He's a gypsy and a con artist, but he's the favorite guy I've ever met in the sport.
Give us a little insight into him. Like, I have my own opinion because he's had guys fight on my card. But every single person that I talk to about him is, well, you know, he changes like his gym location monthly and he's legally changed his name several times. Yeah. Am I off on that?
No. Apparently his real name is Bruce Harvard, which I don't buy. He said Assou Hamdaoui is his nickname, which is a pretty strange nickname to have, especially when you're Moroccan. That's probably your real name, you know. So this is Assou's backstory to me. He's half Moroccan. He's half Brazilian. His father was
That's a long plane ride.
Yeah. His father was a had something to do in politics. So he would travel to Brazil often, and maybe that's where he met his mom. I don't know. So, and oh God, there's so many crazy Assou stories, but that's how he started jiu-jitsu, because his father was Brazilian or his mother was Brazilian. So he trained in Sao Paulo against some guy I never heard of and got his black belt. But
what was he like locally? Like in regards to like the type of atmosphere inside the gym?
He was you know, back then there were no black belts, so he was the only black belt. So everybody, you know, if you heard it, the first time I heard about him, I was training this is when I was still living in California at Brennan's. And Delaney, I would keep in contact with Delaney. I call him every once in a while, mostly to tell me he's a fucking asshole for not teaching me jiu-jitsu. Because when I got out to Brennan's, I finally started learning what jiu-jitsu was, you know. But I'd call Mike periodically to tell him what a dickhead he was. Mike, whatever you were teaching me the last couple of years wasn't jiu-jitsu. I just wanted to let you know that. But then he told me, I met this guy Assou, and he's a black belt, and he's got the best leg locks and neck. And so when I come back, I'm like getting excited. I'm like, oh, we got a black belt to work out with. And then I meet Assou, and you know, he's a character. It's like, I don't know how else to explain the guy. He's a character. I got so many good Assou stories. I mean, if we could fill up the hour and a half with me telling you Assou Hamdaoui stories.
You started with calling him a con artist. Do you think that's a fair description of him?
Yes.
Oh, damn. All right. Can you give us one example?
Well, I don't think he's a black belt. So telling people you're a black belt and taking their money from them is kind of a con, is it not?
Yeah, I would agree.
For sure. Yeah.
I'd agree.
Telling people that you went to Abu Dhabi and tapped everybody out, and then when it was time to actually do the tournament, you didn't do it because they wanted you to do a different weight class, and then taking their money is kind of a con. Telling people that you taught Hayato Sakurai and some of the other big name Japanese fighters, their leg locks, and then taking their money is a con.
Okay. So you would come in with like real heavily loaded statements that can be easily checked on the internet. Sometimes Google, Chris.
You couldn't check that back then,
in the day.
Google has ruined phenomenal stories.
Right.
It really has. It has destroyed really good stories. So, Brian, up until this point, you've taken really, really hard fights at home. Like, you haven't had an easy one yet. Right. And after Tom Kirk, who wasn't an easy fight, obviously, you fight Antonio Carvalho, a Canadian who later went on to fight in the UFC.
Yes. He was a stud. And I didn't know who he was at the time. He came with his training partner, Richard Nanku. I think the guy's name was, they called him the Monkey.
Yeah, he's a stud.
Yeah, so he fought Ryan Ackerman, and Ryan Ackerman, I'm pretty sure, beat him, right?
Uh-huh.
But, I fought Carvalho, and I remember they stopped it. Hank Aguilar was the ref, and he stopped it in the second round. I think Carvalho was, like, mounted on me, and he was punching. Hank was kind of known for jumping in kind of early on fights, and I think there was something that kind of happened. I wasn't, like, hurt or anything. I was just mounted getting punched, but nothing was, like, landing. But I wasn't going to win that fight. That guy had me outclassed by, miles. He was a stud, and
what weight was that at?
Huh?
What weight was that at?
45, I think, maybe.
Okay, yeah, because a lot of times you fought at 155, and you were more of a natural 45-pound fighter.
Yeah, I don't remember what weight it was at, but it was obviously 55 or 45. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, he was hard. And Nick Thompson actually made his MMA debut on that card against Dan Hart.
His nemesis, Dan Hart. I don't think these guys know who Dan Hart is. Otherwise, they'd probably get a chuckle out of it too. But
is Dan the Serrano guy that was on the card with Delaney?
He was Justin Wieman's buddy.
Okay, I reckon the name sounds familiar.
Yeah, he was from
Rockford.
The Rockford area. Yeah, they were like all wrestlers from Hononegah High School. Dan Hart was like the drunk of the black sheep of the group. Didn't really train hard. He drank too much, this and that, but he's got 2 huge wins in his career, both over Nick Thompson. If you talk to Nick Thompson today, the only fighter he's scared of and still scared of is Dan Hart.
Did Dan finish him both times?
He could have went back, later on in his career, fought Dan Hart and got revenge for the 2 losses. He's like, nope, I want nothing to do with that guy.
Did he get knocked out twice by Dan?
I think so.
Wow.
I think so.
Yeah.
The first fight, he gets knocked out by him, huh?
He got, yeah. And Nick is one of those guys that obviously went on to, do great things. Yeah. And, Chris, we always kind of, go around, do a little round robin of people that beat great guys that just never did anything later on. And, Dan Hart certainly falls into that category. So Brian has taken hard fight after hard fight after hard fight. So right after you got Tom Kirk, you've got Antonio Carvalho, both hard fights. And then he goes to Florida, July 19, 2003, and he fights Jorge Masvidal.
Well, I fought Mike Lee before that in Florida.
You did fight one more time in between that. Yeah, you actually got a win on that. I think you beat Mike.
Yeah, TKO'd Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, tough.
And then you go down and you fight Jorge Masvidal.
Masvidal was the second fight on AFC, yeah.
Yeah, and like Chris, when you watch that fight, Masvidal, that was a hard fight for Brian. It was a hard fight, and Brian never quit. You never quit during that fight, man. That was not an easy fight for you.
No, George, I didn't know who George was. I know he was kind of big in the area because of his backyard fights, but I didn't know who he was, so I just went in there. I'm like, I'm gonna go in there and fight this guy, and I was
at 55.
I remember during the fight being very impressed with his skills, because I remember we come out and I hit him with a nice leg kick, and I think he got me with a couple shots. I was like, wow, this guy can box. So I shoot a takedown on him, and right away I'm in like a really tight guillotine. Now, I wasn't any good at takedowns at that time. So anybody could have guillotined me. But I remember just being in a really tight guillotine, and I had to do this like suplex to get out of it. And eventually I remember, well, I'm going to take this guy down. His jiu-jitsu can't be good as his boxing. Wrong. I take him down, and next thing you know, we're both. I go for a footlock, but he's got me in a footlock first, and we're in a crazy scramble. Yeah, it was a pretty crazy fight.
Yeah, it wound up with a decision, and like you kind of got to see the kind of grit that Brian was made up of, because it was like you said, I go for a leg kick, I take 2 punches. I go for a takedown, I end up in a guillotine. There was nothing easy on every single exchange in that fight with yourself. Yeah. There's nothing easy. Like every single exchange is very difficult with what Jorge is attempting to do.
And the best part about that fight was, so George is talking shit to me the whole fight.
Even weigh-ins too?
Yeah, huh?
What about weigh-ins?
No. I don't remember the weigh-ins. So during the fight, he's talking shit. I remember he catches me. I don't know if he knocks me down or I was hurt and I just sat down. But either way, I end up on my back from a shot that George gives me. And then his little friends are outside the ring talking shit to me. I'm just like, what the fuck is going on?
Coming from all angles.
Yeah. So it was pretty funny. After the fight, I talked to, George is, you guys, I'm sure if you've talked to him, George is actually a cool guy. He's actually one of my favorite fighters to watch now. I always root for him. But it was funny at the time. Like, this dude's talking shit. His friends are talking shit. I remember I said one thing. It was like right at the end of the first round. I said something to him. I called him like a pussy or something. And the ref yells at me. I'm like, this dude's been talking shit the whole fight. You didn't say nothing to him.
Home cooking.
Yeah.
And Ben Rothwell was in your corner that night.
He wasn't in my corner. He was down there.
Okay.
But he did end up attacking me later on at the hotel room after I got beat up by George Masvidal. So that was fun.
What was the
All right. So let me give you a little context, a little backstory to this whole weekend. So Justin Wieman and I were rooming together, and then the heavyweights were rooming together. Delaney, Ron Faircloth, and Rothwell. So the morning of the fights, me and Justin get up, and I'm like, Justin, let's go across the street to the diner to get some food. So we didn't go wake up the heavyweights. We were just like, well, if they're sleeping, they're sleeping. We'll just go over there.
Yeah.
So me and Justin are eating, and all of a sudden here come the heavyweight guys, and they come walking by our table, and I scoot over like they're gonna sit by us, and they're like, no, screw you guys. You don't want to wake us up to eat? Forget it. We're not gonna eat with you. So I was just like, all right. And so they went and sat down on the other side of the restaurant. So I said to Justin, I'm like, Justin, let's Dumb and Dumber them. Let's get them. So Justin's like, yeah, okay. So me and Justin finished eating. The waitress comes over with our bill. And I was like, hey, Faircloth and the boys offered to pick up our tab. So just bring it to them. And she's like, okay. And I was like, hey, Ron. So Ron waves his hand and waves at us. And she goes and brings in the bill. So me and Justin get up and we take off running. And we go back to our room. And I lock the door. I put the chain on because I know Ben's going to freak out. So not more than 5 minutes later, Ben's banging down our door. Open the effing door. You guys owe us money, this and that. Ronnie and Mike Delaney are outside there cracking up. They're like, that was hilarious. They're like, shut up, Ben. They're like, that was hilarious.
You got to call security.
But the funny part about it was Ron was like, Ben, you didn't even pay for this. We paid for this. What are you mad about? So Ben was already upset with me because of that. So after the fights, we're in the hotel room. I'm laying on the bed, just like beat up. My eyes are black and blue. And Faircloth was all in his feelings because he didn't think he had a good fight that night, even though he won. I think he beat Wilson Govey. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, Wilson Govey. Yes.
Yeah.
So, but he was like in his feelings for some reason. He thought he had a bad fight, so he's kind of like pissing and moaning. And he's like, man, I did really shitty. And me, like, beat up in a sarcastic voice. I'm like, yeah, Ron, you really sucked out there tonight. And as soon as I said that, Rothwell jumps on me. 275 pounds of Rothwell jumps on lightweight Brian Geraghty, who just got beat up by George Masvidal. And then Ronnie gets up and starts yelling at Ben, like, Ben, what the hell are you doing? He's like, you can't say that about you. And I was like, what the hell is this guy's problem? So yeah, it was an interesting weekend.
Was Ben always like that in practice? Because I know like he left Strasser's under like adverse circumstances.
Yeah.
He got kicked out. Is that what you mean?
He got kicked out.
Is that true?
I think
Yes.
I think it was because of the MRSA that they.
It was the MRSA, and Dave might not admit this, but Dave hated heavyweights. He hated their guts.
Hey, heavyweights aren't good fighters. I don't want to. Don't let anybody fool you. They're not. They're strong and they hit hard. That's it. They're not technically good typically.
So
there's
a reason. There's a reason why they're technically not good, and they're heavyweights. There's a reason for those two things go hand in hand.
Yeah,
they don't fucking work out.
I know.
So what was the straw that broke the camel's back that made Ben leave?
Well, I think it was the MRSA thing. Dave was about to burn his gym down. We couldn't figure out where it was coming from, how everybody kept getting it. But he was losing students, like the regular students, not the fighters, but the regular students he was losing. But, somebody was in the hospital every month because they had MRSA,
Uh-huh.
And it was just getting bad. But there were a few things like that just got on Dave's nerves about Ben. Like when he was fighting that Dagestani guy, we didn't see Ben for training. We didn't see Ben, and then all of a sudden, like a few days before they're supposed to leave to Russia, Ben shows up, and Dave's just going in on him. What the hell is your problem? Dave wasn't really a cursor or anything, but he's going in on Ben, and Ben's like, "I was training." He's like, "What do you mean you were training?" Mm-hmm. "I was in the Dells. I ran up all the stairs of every water slide." And he was dead serious. It wasn't like, I'm doing this to poke the bear. He was dead serious. And we're just like, interesting.
And I ran stairs. Yeah, okay.
But that's heavyweights, especially back then. That was heavyweights.
That was a hard camp for heavyweight, running stairs.
Yeah, that's a lot of water slides.
He's like he gets stuck in a tube.
Park, that's the biggest water park in the world. Ben did his training, he did his due diligence. He's like, I'm going to find the biggest water park in America, and I'm going to go run the stairs on every single slide. And he did it.
Did you go down the slide? Yes, but I ran up. It was a vacation.
That was the easy part.
Ben, he was kicking kids out of the way to get.
Move! I'm training. Kids are flying out the way.
It's like you say he's 275, and they're bigger guys than 6'4", 6'5", or whatever he is, 6'6". He's right around there, but he's just fucking massive. I remember,
huge dude.
I walked out of my hotel room one time in Russia, maybe that same fight, and we were in this cavernous old 70s communist hotel. And Ben is doing wind sprints inside the hotel up the halls. And I come out and he almost ran me over. And I was like, holy fuck. Like, that's
he
a huge move. Yeah. And that's the other thing too. Yeah. And especially when he was 20.
Yeah. Yeah. He could move. He still can move. He's around my age. So he's around, I'm 40. I think he's like a year or two younger than me, but he can still move.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure.
All right, so now we're going on 4 years since Brian's MMA debut, and he has yet to win at home. He has not won in front of his home crowd yet.
What a dickhead.
Until March 6, 2004. Keith Sogla, triangle choke, round 1. Was this a relief?
Triangle.
Huh?
Mounted triangle. Let's get it straight. It was a mounted triangle.
I think I was at that fight too. I might add. I'm almost positive I was.
Yeah, you were probably that was back when you were doing
Yeah, cutthroat.
Yeah.
So, was this like a relief for you to finally get that W at home?
I didn't think of it that way because, like I said, I had already fought and won in Kenosha on like Delaney's show, and I had fought at all these other places that wins, and it didn't really hit me until somebody had brought it up to me, like one of my like little dickhead friends. Because that's why I hated selling tickets, because it was like, you sell tickets to your friends, and there was always a guy that'd be like, "You better not get your ass kicked. I want my $20 back." It's like, you know what?
Meanwhile, you're fighting Antonio Carvalho. You're fighting Antonio Carvalho.
And nobody and your friends don't know that. They just think you're fighting some other slack jawed yokel. So Yeah. But I hated fighting at home. I hated it. Is I'm like, I got bad anxiety as it is. And I get.
Were you a big ticket seller?
Huh?
Were you a big ticket seller?
I did sell. I did have. I don't know if I sold a lot of tickets because I hated selling tickets, but a lot of people I knew would come to watch, whether they bought tickets off me or just bought them at the door. Because I hated selling tickets. So I wasn't the guy who was out there like humping on the street to sell, because I really didn't want people to come watch me. I hated it. There was too much pressure. I loved fighting out of town because I didn't know anybody, you know?
Yeah.
So,
people don't realize that.
Good. I never had good fights at home. So I was just like, I'm in the back, with diarrhea, just like, I don't want to do this. There's, my mom's out there, or, my friends out there. Yeah. I don't want to look bad in front of that. It was way too much pressure on me to fight at home. I hated it.
Man, everybody thinks the opposite. They think, oh, he's got the home crowd advantage. I'm like, man, that's a lot more pressure. People don't understand. Pressure is the worst thing in a fight, man. The least you can have, the better, I think.
For me, there was nothing better than to beat somebody in their hometown and then hear the boos come in. I loved it. You know what I mean? It was a rush.
The boos are the dead silence when nobody's saying anything. Those are fun to like.
That's the polite crowd for the opponent. The nothing.
Well, the promoter's like wrestling to give you your win bonus, like, you son of a bitch, because they didn't want you to win either. But
So you were just talking about Geraghty's win over Keith Sogla. For the life of me, I don't remember Keith Sogla, and I mean, I was the matchmaker for that fight.
Do you remember Pride 167? I think he was in that.
Yeah, okay.
I got you. Pride. 167.
He will be in Pride 167.
I mean, I'm looking at his record now. He's got 20 fights, but I don't remember booking him.
He's got 20 fights?
Yeah.
Wow.
He was more of like, he did like the Iowa circuit. He's got a lot of fights in Iowa.
That show, there's definitely me, like Amir Bassard, Eddie Wineland, Joel Blanton.
Maybe I'm thinking of somebody different then. Because I thought he was like one of Wieman's buddies, that just like fought like once, like he was like a kickboxer.
Oh, I'm looking at his record. He came from, what was that guy, Captain Joe from North Dakota? What was that dude's name?
I don't know.
Oh man, the captain,
the only captain I know is Tommy Kirk.
No. This guy.
Keep coming back to Kirk.
This guy's got 100 fights, but he's a Travis Fulton type from North Dakota. Just kind of filling out a card.
Does he have a win over Serrano?
He might. I'm gonna look him up. But Keith Sogla must have been one of his guys because he's from North Dakota. I can't think of anybody else from up there.
Then Keith Sogla's not the guy I was thinking of, and I could have. Now that I'm thinking of Keith Sogla, I think I armbarred him.
No, you got him at the triangle. I think that was him on a triangle. You got it.
Let's just check here. It does say submission triangle choke 2 minutes in. So
I remember that. You're on top. You lifted him up. No, I was at that bout.
I'm guessing.
I was 100% there.
Like somewhere there's a piece of paper with my signature and his signature, but
Miguel,
that's probably worth the money.
Miguel, I think that may have been, like, you and I had talked several times on the phone. That was the first time you and I had interacted in person.
Really?
Okay. Yeah, wow. I mean, like hands on. Like we ran into each other, but Miguel was always kind of the man. He was always kind of getting his arm pulled by somebody. But Dave Strasser and you and I had a sit down that day. Yeah. A little later on, Chris, I think I was a judge of this fight. The next fight, he fights Joao Herdy and wins a split decision.
I know Joao. He used to train with us.
That guy was a stud.
Yeah, was he another? He had a pit bull nickname too, didn't he? Like
they all do.
From Brazil, of course he did. There's only like 4 nicknames from there, and that's one of them. He was a pit bull. Yeah, he was Marcelo Montera's student.
Yeah,
is Marcelo still in Indianapolis?
Oh yeah.
He's got a good school, I bet, then, huh? Because he's been there forever.
Yeah.
He fought on that card too, didn't he? Didn't he fight?
He only had a couple fights, but that might have been
He
one.
might have fought on that card, I think. I thought he fought on Strasser's card. Maybe he didn't.
I got him.
Fought a couple times.
I got the South Dakota guy. Is it Bruce Nelson? And you might remember
Nelson.
you remember
that's the captain? He didn't beat Adrian Serrano. I remember Bruce Nelson. He was the captain?
I think his nickname was the captain, Bruce Nelson. It doesn't say that on Short Dog, but that's who I was thinking of.
A good nickname.
He was a jobber, though. He definitely was a jobber.
Yeah, 27 and 37.
Yeah.
A lot of fights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he was a guy. He'd fight anybody. He'd fight every weekend. You know.
Yeah. So Brian, you go from there to where you actually fight in Hawaii. Like a little later on, there's a couple fights in between where you fight Kaleo Kwan and you hit another triangle in that bout. Mm-hmm. Chris, when you go through this card, it's phenomenal. First off, how did you land that fight in Hawaii, Brian?
So, as I said before, I lived at Chris Brennan gym, so we still kept in touch, and one of his fighters fell out. So that was another short notice fight I took, but you're not going to turn down Hawaii. You know? And I don't remember what I got paid for it. It wasn't great, but I still wasn't going to turn down a paid trip to Hawaii. And that was probably my favorite fight I experienced. Not the fight, but just overall experience I ever had. That promotion at that time was awesome. The guy who ran it owned a limo service. So everywhere we went, we were picked up in a stretch something. So nice. It was awesome. And they put us at a really nice hotel on Waikiki. But I got the fight because of Chris's student got hurt. So Chris brought me in. And that, like I said, that was after Chris did that match with
Marcelo Garcia. Yeah.
And I had to talk him into fighting that night because he really didn't want to. His rib was really messed up and he didn't want to fight because he wasn't training. And he
won. I think he won. He also won.
He murdered the guy after almost getting his head taken off because he fought the Hawaiian knockout artist Mark Moreno. And that dude, if that guy hit you, that dude ended my brother's fighting career. A year later. So he was just a heavy hitter, like most Hawaiians were. Like when I fought that Kaleo Kwan, he was like a kickboxing champion, and I didn't know nothing about Hawaiian guys. And I remember Chris specifically told me, he's like, Geraghty, I know you think you can box, but it's not a good idea. Take this guy down. All these Hawaiian guys do is that's all they do is box. That's it. So don't mess around. And I'm just like, whatever. I can fight, you know. And the first kick the guy throws at me breaks my leg. First kick. Yeah. So I shoot a half-ass takedown on a broken leg. And I don't even come close to it. So then I sit the guard, and he kicks me about 3 times when I'm on my back in this broken leg. And I'm just like, you got to be kidding me. Like, when you fight, you don't really feel a whole lot of shots to the face. The only shots you really feel are body shots or leg kicks. And he was kicking me in the leg, and I'm just like, what the hell? I'm just like, why does this hurt so bad? And I ended up kicking him off my back and then turned into like a heel hook, which eventually got him down, and he scrambled in my guard, and I was able to finish it with a triangle. And I didn't realize how bad my leg was until the fight was over, and I started walking back to the locker room, and that's when I realized something seriously is wrong here. And I was out for almost a year.
Was it tib fib or tib, or was it?
It was, what's the smaller bone?
It's a
tibula, right?
I think so.
Chris, you're the fireman. Come on.
Yeah.
It's a tib. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
One of them.
The smaller bone was broken, and it tore all my cartilage.
Did he break all your legs?
Huh?
Did he break all your legs?
Yeah. And so I actually had surgery 2 weeks later after that.
Oh, it was that serious?
It tore all my cartilage. My cartilage wasn't attached to my knee. It was in the back of my knee.
So looking back, you probably should have listened to Brennan. Said, maybe I'm not going to stand up with this guy.
Yeah. But as you can tell from the way my career's been going, I wasn't very good at listening to people. I kind of walked my own path. Went my own way.
What do these guys know?
Let me ask, right now you're in the middle of your career, but we've already started talking about Nick Thompson, and some of the other guys with Strassers, and you're fighting a lot. When did you start also working people's corners?
Well, I think the first time was when Serrano sent me with, I've been cornering Delaney ever since I started. So anytime Delaney would fight, I would corner. And I cornered Travis Fulton once on a shootbox or Sancho fight down in St. Louis. So I was used to cornering people.
Did you drive down with Travis?
Huh?
Did you drive down with Travis?
No. I drove down with this was when it was crazy. So it was a Friday night. We fought in Canton. This was with Serrano. And then Saturday night we went to go fight in St. Louis. So it was MMA on a Friday, Sancho on a Saturday. This is how stupid we were back then, Like, legally you couldn't do something like that today.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So how was your experience with Travis Fulton?
It sucks what the news you hear about him, but I fucking love Travis. He was one of the funniest dudes I ever met. He was great. And he gave me probably the best piece of advice for MMA that I ever got from anybody.
Let's hear it.
He said, we were at a show and he was there cornering somebody. And I didn't know that. I just asked him, what are you doing here? He's like, I'm here to corner so-and-so. And he sighed and I'm like, well, what's wrong? He's like, it's one thing to lose a fight, but it's even more embarrassing when the guy you're cornering loses. That was the best advice I ever got. You're right. It's embarrassing.
So on that Hawaii card, there's some all-star one, Jeff Monson's on the card.
Jeff Monson.
Oh.
So I don't know Jeff Monson. Never met the guy. We fought on the same card down in Florida when he fought Delaney, but I never talked to him, never met him, didn't know him, okay? So after my fight and after all of us, they called us the mainland guys. We were part of a tournament. After our fights were over, we just went out to watch the rest of the fights. Monson was coming up fighting and then the main event. So after Monson's fight was over, I went to go to the back to go check something, grab something out of my bag or something. And as I'm coming back, Jeff Monson's got my mouthpiece in his hand and he's putting it down in my bag. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I had to use this. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, I tried on a bunch of them. Yours is the only one that fit. I was like, what the fuck? I don't know this dude at all. He grabbed my mouth. He went through my bag, my teammates' bags, who knows who else's bags, grabbed my mouthpiece, put it in his mouth, and went and fought.
Did you go, you can have it, bud. It's all yours now.
Here's the thing. That was a mouthpiece that they discontinued making it. I couldn't, and it was my favorite mouthpiece. I wore that mouthpiece for years, and I couldn't get another one like that. It had the big hole in the middle to breathe out of. Yeah. I couldn't wear a single piece because I would always spit it out of my mouth. Because every time I breathe, a punching, and it would come flying out. So that was the only double piece that was comfortable enough for me to wear. So I couldn't get rid of it. I had to keep wearing this damn thing for years after. I might have washed it or rinsed it off. I don't know.
Probably. I hope you did because
Monson, Brian, we've got a library, a virtual library of Monson stories that we're clipping them out right now. They're not believable and we've got everybody involved telling the same story, so they're not lying. It's just Jeff Monson. There needs to be a movie made about him, and I'm not even talking about his political beliefs. Just he's a petri dish. He's just not afraid of germs.
Yeah, apparently. And he's an anarchist or something, right?
He's living in Russia. He denounced his United States citizenship. He's living in Russia right now, and he's got he's been married 3 or 4 times all at the same time. Yeah. And he's married to another chick in Russia, and he's got a brand new baby. Dude, he fought the last 8 years of his career with one eye. Never told anybody.
No, I thought that was Michael Bisping. That was him too.
That's him too.
A lot in common.
What did Dennis Hallman tell us at the very end of the interview?
That he once actually got clean pee and injected it right into his kidneys to try to pee it out himself.
No way.
Yeah.
And
I believe he probably did try that.
Brian, you're exactly correct in what your response might be, but then when you hear everything that took place up until like what happened at that, it's 100% believable.
Now, I did like the one where he brought his girlfriend into the ring while he was married to somebody else. They saw that. Probably not wise.
Oh, shit.
So just got a few stories. I'm glad you got out with, the mouthpiece probably needed some disinfectant. But
yeah.
I still have that mouthpiece. I wonder if I should send it to him. Here's probably yours.
While wearing it after Jeff, you probably don't got to wear a mask now. I mean, whatever.
Whatever you guys killing COVID.
Yeah. And you, dude, guess who else is on it? Guess what other phenomenal matchup is on the card?
Come on, Dan Severn versus Shannon the Cannon Rich.
Yes, it is.
Now,
yes, it is.
I gotta say now, here we got 250 Fight Club. We got 250 Fight Club members here. And for all I've seen, like, these are proud guys, right? So, like, I don't think that we're going to go through their records and find a lot of works. And Severn marks 101 wins, and we know that his fight with Brad Kohler was a work. The promoter told us. Michael, could we have unearthed another one here?
Is this, Brian, you said you watched
you were
some
there
of
live
the main
for
fights.
This...
Wait a minute. Dude, if I got a pen, all right, hold up. Did they go over the top rope?
Almost.
Oh, dude, it's a work.
Shannon
dude, that's a Dan
Cannon,
Severn classic. Yes.
Shannon the Cannon landed a high kick on Severn that hit him in like the shoulder, and he did like a backflip. Now, here's the funny part: is we're watching this just like we're laughing. This is funny. Like, oh my! The promoter is right next to us, cursing up a storm. I paid these motherfuckers $10,000 a piece to fight each other, and this is what they're doing. He is losing his shit. He had no idea that these guys were going to do a work. I don't know how you could book a 50-year-old Severn and a Shannon the Cannon and expect a real fight to happen, but he expect. I mean, this was the fakest thing I've ever seen in my life. It was
so no over the top ropes. No over the top rope. They didn't go over the top rope. Neither of them.
I don't remember. I don't think they went over the top ropes. I mean, I have the DVD here. I could watch it, see if they did. Maybe, I think they actually cut that fight from the DVD. So actually, I don't think I have that. I think they probably cut that fight.
It's probably a smart move.
I remember Monson fighting on that card though, and he had a real fight. The thing that I liked about Monson is he would pull half guard as a heavyweight and like deep half sweep you, which was just like unheard of for a heavyweight to do at that time. Yeah. And he did it with like ease.
Yeah, no, it's funny because we interviewed him, and aside from all the other stuff, you really get a sense of a dude. He said it. He said, "I'm a good fighter, but I'm a great grappler."
Yeah.
And when it comes down to it, that's what you're talking about. We were talking about him fighting Kerr, which never happened, and he goes, I pull guard on Kerr. It's like you don't get heavyweights like that. You're right. You're absolutely right.
You're either going to pull guard or get taken down, so I might as well pull guard.
Yeah, no. But he actually said, I want to work from my back against Kerr, because I got a more sophisticated game. That's actually what he said.
Wait, Miguel, I think he said his fight with Kerr was not a work because people were claiming it was because he kind of took it easy on him.
Oh, they did fight.
No, but they did an MMA fight when Kerr was shot. I'm talking about
Kerr was shot. It got canceled. It got canceled against Chris Gilliam. He was supposed to fight Chris Gilliam, and Gilliam kept calling the commission, trying to get him tested for steroids, and then everyone failed their medicals. It was just a total shit show. Total shit show. That card. And you had mentioned that you actually lived with Chris Brennan. There was like a living quarters.
Yes.
Like, who were you living with at that living quarters at that time? Because he had some pretty big name guys there.
Yes. When I first moved out there, it was that was living. He had a couple guys living there nobody ever heard of, and Gerald Streetbent had moved out there a couple of days after I moved out there.
So you were in the same house as Gerald Streetbent?
In the same house as Gerald Streetbent, and he was a nut. He was funny, but he was a nut. And I got along well with him, but he didn't get along well with our other roommate, Tom Bunbury. Tom Bunbury was this big Englishman. He was a good-looking guy, blind guy. He wasn't there to fight. This was kind of like a hostel for Tom. Tom's from Europe. You know, he was somewhere. He was living in America for cheap, and he liked to train, but he didn't want to fight. He was just kind of doing it, you know, and he picked up a lot of girls because he's a big, good-looking Englishman with that English accent. Girls loved it. And I think Gerald didn't like that. So Gerald would always butt heads with Tom and give Tom a hard time. And like I said, Tom wasn't a fighter, so he wouldn't like push back too much. You know, but I got along well with Gerald. Gerald was a strange guy. And in with Gerald comes his uncle, Rafiel Torre, where some of you may or may not have heard of before.
Wait. Was Rafiel Torre also living there?
No. But he started coming around the gym because I don't know if because of Gerald or just because he was. But so go ahead.
We got to frame this properly so everyone can kind of catch up. So essentially, Gerald Streetbent, Rafiel Torre is a guy that was from California, and he spoke with like an accent and was a black belt. Okay. And then Eddie Bravo starts rolling with him, but he immediately gets into the in crowd. Like he's hanging out with the Joe Rogans. Yes. He's hanging out with like the Eddie Bravos. The Gracies welcome him because he was doing like a lot.
Let's put it like this. Rafiel Torre was the Assou Hamdaoui of Southern California.
so he was
10. Assou could actually roll. So if you rolled with Assou would footlock you. Assou would neck crank you. Rafiel Torre didn't know shit. You know,
did you ever roll with Rafiel?
No, but if you ever seen his fights when he fought his own student, King of the or whatever show it was out there, and it was
King of the Cage. So he did a bunch of fake fights.
A blue belt from Brazil, and he was half black Brazilian, kind of like.
He claimed he was a black belt.
I thought he said he claimed he was a blue. Maybe it was a black belt.
It was black. Yeah, no, okay. I'm like really
if I'm not
mistaken.
If I'm not mistaken, I think his black belt was from his father, right? I think his father gave him his black belt, which
who probably wasn't a real person.
Which is sometimes maybe questionable, right?
Who wasn't real. You know, I think his connection to Brazil was his aunt on his father's ex-wife's sister side's grandma was half Brazilian. So in that. Was also Brazilian.
So he immediately becomes like jiu-jitsu royalty because there's not a lot of black belts in the United States. So he starts like doing a lot of press, and he starts doing kind of like the Bad Breed TV. He's really like in with like the media in regards to what's happening, and like he carries himself like an absolute like authority in it. So in the meantime, Eddie Bravo rolls with the guy one time, and Eddie goes, I don't even think this guy's like a friggin' white belt. Like,
right.
And Eddie confronts him, and it kind of makes the jiu-jitsu circle. So now, like, the real people who have accepted him are kind of like, they got eyes on him.
Yes.
And what happens is Rafiel is banging some chick at the gym.
Married chick
whose husband's got like a huge life insurance policy. With that life insurance policy, he goes to Gerald Streetbent and goes, hey, Gerald, I'm going to give you some cash. I'll give you like, I think it was $10,000, but you got to take care of dude for me. You know, because Streetbent's running around saying he's an all-pro Marine, you know, murderer, killer, all this stuff. Like, and he's also like an Eddie Bravo student. So Streetbent, in essence, doesn't go along with it, keeps his mouth shut. Rafiel kills the guy. Like a year and a half later, Streetbent has like some sort of ethical, oh my gosh, I can't believe I let this happen. My personal opinion is he needed some money. He told Rafiel, I know you did it. You got this huge life insurance policy. You got to pay me. Rafiel said, absolutely not. And then he went and told the cops on him. That's my personal, that's what I think happened because I'm, former law enforcement, been around a few blocks. Yeah. But in essence, at that point, Rafiel goes to jail. Strevin testifies against him. In the meantime, Strevin gets in a road rage altercation, kills an almost 60-year-old guy that's had a couple beers, point blank in the head, somehow gets self-defense, does 8 years, unarmed guy, right. I don't know, gets 8 years, comes out, gets popped for sexually molesting or rape an underage chick. And now he's a registered sex offender. So now we've got the backstory and we've come full circle. Wow. So you're telling me, was that you just being in jest in regards to Rafiel Torre being his uncle, or is that what Gerald Streben told you at that time?
This is what Gerald Streben told me. And he kind of told the way
that's breaking news.
Huh?
That's breaking news because no one's ever said that before.
So he said, Gerald, everybody knew who Rafiel was. So Chris knew, Brennan knew who he was, Gerald knew who he was, and Gerald was just kind of he's harmless. We just let him think that he's this jiu-jitsu guy, but he's harmless. He just wants to report on this stuff, and he kind of used that to get in. So he would come to the gym when Chris would do jiu-jitsu tournaments, then he would do his little write-ups, and nobody really cared. Nobody cared. We all knew he wasn't who he said he was, but nobody cared. And I just took what Gerald's word for it. He's harmless. Yeah, who cares? Then he goes on to end up murdering somebody. And
well, both. Well, I mean, it was a tag team effort right there, And what's crazy is when Rafiel's up for murder charges, in court they said, and Rafiel Torre's not even his name. So he gets convicted, and Rafiel Torre, embarrassed by the entire situation, goes and gets his name legally changed before he goes to jail, because that's really important.
Oh, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, wait, I'm not a black belt. No, I'm a blue belt. No. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you, though, while you were with Brennan, you did the jiu-jitsu tournament scene in California and stuff. I mean, Eddie Bravo, Gerald Street, you talk about you probably saw some really good jiu-jitsu at some point.
Yeah. I remember the first tournament Chris did at the gym. Dean Lister was in it.
Wow.
And I didn't know who Dean Lister was. Everybody else did there, because Chris's top student was this guy. His name was Jeremy Williams. God bless his soul. He was really, really good fighter, really good at jiu-jitsu. And Jeremy was scared to death to do the match against Dean Lister. And I couldn't believe it, because Jeremy was like a god to me. I was like, this dude's awesome. And he was scared to death of Dean Lister. Dean Lister grabbed his foot, and Jeremy wanted nothing to do with it, tapped out, and that was it. Also, what's his name was at the tournament? The Japanese guy, We Are One. He had the We Are One flag. What's his name?
Genki Sudo?
Genki Sudo was there. And he smoked everybody. So dude, there were some studs at this local tournament. And, for me, I was some kid from Wisconsin. I didn't know who anybody was. So I'm just like,
dude, you were a Mike Delaney blue belt, dude. Don't be selling yourself short.
I went up to Mark Lehman was there, and I was like, hey, Mark Lehman, Mike Delaney is? He's like, who? Never mind. I'm gonna go back to bed.
So, that's a lot of names.
Hey, guess who else lived in Chris Brennan's gym? I think it was right around that same time as well. Was Rampage there?
Rampage Jackson was my roommate in California.
What? Nice.
Really?
And this was right before he got big. They brought whoever his manager was, brought him to Chris's and said, you're going to live here and train, because he was supposed to fight Ken Shamrock in, I think it was King of the Cage.
So you didn't actually share the Cadillac with him. You actually had a house where you were roommates with him. You didn't sneak in the back of the Cadillac.
Let me explain to you what we lived in. It was a business office with a warehouse in the back, and we slept in the office rooms. We had bunk beds set up in there.
Nice. So
at one time there was 10 of us sleeping in this fucking place. We are covered in ringworm. Everybody. It was disgusting. We're lucky that the MRSA thing wasn't big yet because we would all been dead.
You
We
had
didn't
it.
have a shower. We didn't have a kitchen.
Oh.
So to shower, we had to walk 1.5 miles up the road to the World Gym to take a shower. Now, if it was a holiday or we got done training too late at night, we couldn't go shower. So we'd go sneak into hotels and go into the hot tub, and that was our shower. We were a bunch of dirt bags. You know, that's what we were. We were just dirt bags.
What was it like living with Rampage?
It was interesting. He was like a big baby. He complained a lot. He was like, when it came to like training and stuff, just like as like a person, he was a cool person. You know, it was funny because we'd stay up and like we'd talk to each other till like 2 a.m. just about like general stuff. And I thought we had like a pretty good, you know, relationship. He would actually let me borrow his car to go to work because none of us had a car. He came in with a car, so he'd let me borrow it. And then I remember like a year down the road, somebody I knew was going to a fight he was at. And I was like, oh, tell Rampage I said hi. And then I asked my friend like a week later, hey, so what did Rampage say? He's like, he doesn't know who you are. No idea who you are. But he was kind of like a big baby. Like we'd go like do conditioning workouts where like Chris would take us to the beach and they were like sand hills. And he would be like dogging it up the sand hills. Like people would be carrying him. He's like crying, like didn't want to do it. I remember I used to run Chris's kickboxing classes. And so Quentin was doing a kickboxing class and we'd do like light sparring. And he was light sparring with somebody. And I was like just walking around watching everybody. And all of a sudden I feel this tap on my shoulder and I turn around and it's Rampage. And I'm like, what's up? And he's like, hey, little Jimmy over here is kicking me too hard in the leg. Can you tell him to slow it down? And I'm just like, yeah, I guess. I'm like, Jimmy, don't kick Rampage in the leg that hard.
You're hurting the big guys.
Oh, yeah. Jesus. He was
but
like that.
He was a monster though, because then it would come to MMA sparring and he didn't care who you were, what your weight class. He'd pick you up over your head and just toss you on the. I remember we were doing MMA sparring once and he picks me up, slams me into the cage, and he's on top of me, just elbowing me in the face. And you know, I'm sitting there like, Quentin, hey, bud, hey, can you ease up a little bit, you know? And there was no. When it came to MMA, there was no slowing down for him. But when you broke it down into the different arts, he was a little bit of a baby, you know. And then Ken Shamrock gets hurt, and that fight's called off. And then all of a sudden, Kazushi Sakuraba needs an opponent.
Pride.
And he got that fight. That's what exploded his career. And the fight almost didn't happen. So Quentin had some legal troubles in the States. He had gotten into some fights and some other stuff with like college.
He's lying. He's lying, Chris.
Okay.
Yeah. So the story goes, now I didn't go out to Japan, so I'm taking the story from Quentin telling me and from what Brennan and those guys were telling me. They get on the plane and the feds show up on the plane to take Quentin, like, hey, you can't leave the States. He
had a warrant.
They somehow get it worked out to where they let him leave. So now
he posted bond and then he jumped on the next plane. So what was the cause of it?
The cause of what?
Of why the feds showed up?
I don't know. If you ask Quentin, he was getting set up. He also got sick cutting weight. So he got really sick cutting weight. And when his story was he was poisoned. Now, here's the thing: who gains from him not fighting Sakuraba?
Nobody.
Chris Brennan gains from it because he's the next man up. If he can't fight.
Oh, so he kind of got mad at Chris?
So he thinks Chris is trying to sabotage this fight so Chris could get this fight with Sakuraba. I don't think that's what happened.
It's a good theory.
Was that the end of his
that was the end of their relationship. He moved out shortly after that.
Well, you can't stay with people who are poisoning you. That's just one of
No, it's not a good business decision.
Hey, you know what I always remember about that fight? I remember this. I remember watching, Pride. There's Quentin Rampage Jackson. They were like interviewing him, and they go, Quentin, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Like, well, I'm 22 years old, so I see myself as being 27. It was just it was class. I was like, yep.
They loved him.
That's a straight quote.
Him out there. Yeah, he became an instant star in Japan. They loved him.
Yeah, exactly.
His whole character, the
chain around his neck.
Yeah, they loved it.
Ow.
Yeah, the junkyard dog. Yeah. And you know what, man? Like being a kid watching that thing at home, I loved him too, man. He was one of my favorite fighters back in the day.
Mike, were you with us at the Abu Dhabi in San Diego? We did.
Yes, the 2005. Yeah, at the Pyramid. Yeah, I was out there for that, helping you.
Because Quentin showed up at that, and if people are telling me, it's like, yeah, Quentin Jackson's outside. I'm like, yeah, that's nice. I like that. I there's no grappling in him. I'm not giving him a ticket. I kind of got uppity about it,
No,
I'm
he
not
got
giving
in.
him a ticket. Of course he got in. Eventually,
somebody bought a ticket for him. He didn't get comped in. Somebody bought him a ticket. He wouldn't buy himself a ticket. He literally was out in front of the place until somebody goes, all right, here's a ticket.
No, I may have let him in at some point too, but for the
really?
first little bit, I don't remember. I'm not really.
He was mad.
But yeah, it's like, it's a grappling show, dude. You're a kickboxer and, and just go home. Your car's right there. You're home. You know what I mean? It's like, didn't he live in his car for a while? So, yeah, it's like, but I that's my only exposure to him because
here's your car, go home.
So
take long.
Brian, I hate guys that ask for comps. That's just low,
So Brian goes from Hawaii. And then shortly thereafter, about a year after it.
Yeah, hold up. I had surgery.
And then
I was actually supposed to fight Mike Brown on AFC next because I had before I went to Hawaii, I fought Rocky Long, and I fought some other kid and knocked him out in AFC. So I was in line for a title shot in AFC against Mike Brown.
That's a hard fight.
And then I took that fight in Hawaii and I broke my leg, so I couldn't do the Michael Brown fight.
So shortly thereafter, Hawaii, after Brian recovers, you get on the Ultimate Fighter season 5.
Yeah.
Take us through that process because that wasn't an easy one to get through at that point.
Well, hold on. I got one question. Had Solomon done a season before that, or
he was on season 2 or 3?
Okay, so like,
we had a relationship.
Okay, talk a little bit about that.
With the tough people. So, you know how it is in any business. Sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Oh yeah.
So they liked the tape I sent in. I made it funny. I made a highlight tape, but I put jokes in it. And they liked it because they wanted. That's what they said. It was almost like, we don't really care if you can fight, but if you have personality, I'm like, hey, I can't fight. I certainly have a decent amount of personality. I can fight a little bit. I did fight Steve Berger drunk, so I will fight.
Yeah,
I'm good at it.
Cheap.
But I'll do it. So I put in a crazy tape, and me and my other teammate Rob Roy, as you guys probably know, Sharon Leger, that's French for Leggett. We're out and we both went out to Vegas, and I came out who they chose out of us guys from Strasser's. So that was huge. That was a life changer, obviously. That's when I decided, okay, I'm gonna start taking this as serious as a job.
Now that I'm on TV, you might as well take it serious.
And that was at the time. I'm still working. I'm still working full time. I'm working full time, and so training was kind of like, I'd do it a few days a week. After I get done with work, and some days I'd miss training because I got off work too late. So I'm not like totally delved into MMA yet, even though I had lived at Brennan's and this and that, but I was still kind of like, I need a job and this and that. And then when I got in the Ultimate Fighter, that's when I'm like, okay, this is my ticket. This is my chance. And that's why I quit working, and I decided to, take advantage of the situation.
How long were you gone for?
It was only like 6 weeks, I think.
Okay. Was that difficult living in a house for 6 weeks with no outside contact?
I had done 10 months in jail when I was a senior in high school, so it wasn't.
Fair enough. Hey, now I have something for you. Now, when you got out of the house, to me, I thought it was maybe being in a little prison time made it a little bit different. But I mean, when I got out of the house, I felt like a little weird. I was like, man, I've only been around these guys for the last 6 weeks, and that's it. No TV, no radio. I felt weird when I went home. People were like, you're acting kind of strange. It took me a couple of days to get readjusted. Did you have that when you left the house, or not really because you did the prison thing?
Yeah, no. I was happy to be home and be out of there because it wasn't fun. I didn't take advantage of it like I should have, because like I said, I'm an anxious person. So like anxiety usually gets the best of me in a lot of situations. And I just had anxiety like the whole time, and it was relief to get out of the house. You know, like I said, it wasn't hard doing the 6 weeks. You know, I could have done it standing on my head, but it was just like a lot of anxiety, thinking about what's the next move after that, and then plus not having a good showing on it. I was happy to be home, you know, and get out of there. It was a good. The thing that I didn't like about the house was the actual training. It was like you only, and because I always wondered, like when I watched the seasons prior to mine, I was like, these guys don't look that great. They don't look very good. And then when I did the show, I'm like, well, this explains why they don't look that good. You don't get a lot of training. You know, you get 2 sessions, like an hour a piece or something like that. You can't go to the gym and run. You can't do mitt work with your boxing coach. You can't go drill, you do whatever workout they tell you to do. And then that's it. The rest of the time you're sitting at the house, you know, and they want you to, you know, they want conflict. They won't tell you that, but that's what they want. They fill your pantry up full of alcohol, and then are appalled when 2 guys in the house fight each other. You know, it's like, I can't believe they just did that.
Yeah.
Really.
Who would have thought it?
Now we've had a few guys on that show, but how, like, and you said you're nervous. Is it 24 hours a day, camera guys like there all the time?
Yeah, it gets annoying. And they don't like you looking at the camera, because what the camera's looking at me and I'm not doing anything, I'm just looking back at the camera. So it's just me and the camera sitting there staring at each other, you know, and then all of a sudden the phone's ringing.
Is it a dude with a stick like on the camera, or do they put like remotes?
No, dude with a stick and a microphone, you know, the boom and everything, and with a camera on your face. So then I'm looking at the camera, you know, where's the camera on this thing? So I'm just sitting there staring, and then all of a sudden the phone rings, and they're like, hey, Geraghty, this is the producers, I want to talk to you. Yeah, can you stop looking at the camera? Well, I'm not fucking doing anything right now. So can you have this camera out of my face? I'm not doing anything, you know? Yeah, I'm just sitting here. Well, yeah, it's part of the show. And it was, you know, it's not their fault. They're doing their job, you know, but it got a little tiresome of just, as soon as you wake up, you're trying to take a pee, and the camera guy's nudging you to put your microphone on. Like, hey, come on, take it. I was like, man, I'm trying to cut a deuce right now. Can you just give me a few? Well, we need your microphone on. I'm like, you need to hear this? Yeah, come on. So, you know, it's
And is that like a camera guy per dude? Like that guy's not switching up. He's on you. Is that how it works?
No. They just had like whatever. Maybe there'd be 3 camera guys at a time, and they worked in shifts. There was the morning guys, there's afternoon guys, there's the nighttime guys. You know.
So were you were on the show with Gabe Ruediger? Am I correct, or am I off on that?
Yes.
Okay, so Gabe had like one of the epic meltdowns where Miguel, that Trent, New Jersey, Abu Dhabi, that I helped you. I think it was like what 2007. I can't, 2007. So right after he looked completely awful on that show, he shows up in Trenton, and he was literally just apologizing to everybody. And the chick he was with was so embarrassed, dude. She was a smoke show, and she was just like, "I can't believe we're here. We should be in hiding." What was it like being in the house watching like that unfold? Fudgy the Whale,
it was
him being a baby.
Hilarious. It was funny because it was all self-inflicted.
Those are the best ones to watch. I might add.
Huh?
Those are the best ones to watch.
Yeah,
you know, the self-inflicted,
self-destruction. You knew what the weight class was coming in. You know, it's not like it was like a surprise. Like, oh, by the way, this season's 155. I was like, no, you knew what it was when you were coming in. Now, I had no issues making weight because I'm a 145er fighting a 155. So making weight for me is like, no, so to me, that's not even like a possibility popping in my head that I might not make weight. So that's when I first figured out, whoa, these guys walk around a lot heavier. I was like one of the smaller guys there. The average walk around weight of the guys on my season was like 185.
That's nuts.
Yeah. So I'm like I'm walking around at 160 pounds soaking wet, and so these guys are like monsters. I'm like, Jesus. And so Gabe Ruediger, though, wasn't like in shape 185. He was kind of like, soft, dumpy 185. And, he picked a fight early, or I forgot exactly when he picked a fight, but, he had time to make weight. He had a lot of time, but he's sitting there, eating cake and eating, just because you could order when you're in the house, you order whatever you want. It had a grocery list. You fill out whatever you wanted. They brought it to you. They told you that's not how it was going to happen before the show. But once you get there, that's exactly how it happened. Nate Diaz was ordering hookahs and people were ordering expensive tequila and they were bringing it. I tried to order a guitar and they wouldn't bring the guitar. They're like, no, we can't have you guys singing. Like, no, you just have us killing each other, drunk on vodka and tequila. But God forbid we're singing, Kumbaya. Okay. But yeah, the magic grocery list. You sign it in the morning, by the afternoon, your groceries were there, So he just was eating whatever he wanted. Now I didn't see him cutting weight because that's when we were, off doing our training, and then you come back to the house to hear Gabe's out getting a colonic and and you're just like, what is going on?
Lose weight, baby.
Yeah, and it was funny, it was funny, and it was you felt a little bad for him because he came back and he was embarrassed, and he tried to come in like a tough guy, like he wanted to, what are you guys, making fun, but it was just like, dude, like, we were making fun of him, but then you kind of feel bad. You're like, yeah, this is embarrassing. This is going on national TV. This guy's getting a colonic and, getting dragged in and out of a sauna, and it's just weird. But
did you know it was going to be as bad as it came out? Like, did you think it was going to be that bad, or did you think it'd be a little like easier?
I never watched the show, so I don't know how it came out on TV. But
it was
I
bad.
just know how it was while it happened. I've seen clips on the internet. They show a clip. So I watched some clips of it, and it's funny to watch. And like I thought it was bad when we were there. So I can only imagine how it looked to everybody else.
Was he friends with anybody in the house?
The first few days we were all, but until the teams got split up, we're all like friendly. Me and Gabe actually had a mutual friend, my buddy Rick McCorkle. They trained together at Millennia Jiu-Jitsu in California. So we came in like kind of like, hey, we kind of know each other through Rick. And so we were buddy like until kind of that happened. So
see you later, buddy.
You're on your own now.
He was a funny guy. He had a lot of personality, and I remember he told me what we were sitting and talking. Once we figured out we had a mutual friend and we were talking one night, and he says to me, he's like, Brian, I'm really, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, I'm really not that great. I just have a good manager. He's like, if you drive through my hometown, I'm on billboards, not because I'm that good, because I have a good manager. Wow. And I was like, wow, like, okay.
I need your manager, yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask.
What's his number?
Like, you're on TV. You said you didn't watch it, but like, maybe you won't remember, but when was the first time you were at the house that you actually heard the word colonic? Like, who was it who said it? Was it production? Like, did you get there?
No,
there's a colonic brochure,
Yeah, I think Gabe had been talking about it because he said he's done it before. It wasn't like this is the last ditch effort. I'm going to go try anything. And someone's like, hey, why don't you try colonic? This was something he's done before. That was like part of his weight cutting routine. So it wasn't like this is something new. he like said he like swore by this colonic. Like this is I'm gonna lose at least 2-3 pounds.
Can I sidetrack real quick? So Sims went and got Wes Sims Hammerhouse got a colonic. Okay, he calls me up and he's like, "Dude, the chick was so hot. She's so hot." He's like, "I got to figure out a way to get her on a date." He went back there like 6 or 7 times and he couldn't cross that bridge. Sims probably got about a dozen colonics from a chick trying to figure out how to ask her out on a date, and she saw too much. I swear to God, she saw too much. Yeah, she saw little too much.
That's exactly what I thought. I thought, that's a very personal thing.
I'm out.
Right. So after the Ultimate Fighter, Brian, May 25th, 2007. You headline the Heat Japan card against Hatsu Hioki.
Hioki.
Yes.
I think he was Asian. He might have been Asian. He looked Asian.
Possibly.
What was your experience in Japan? How was it?
That was another one of my favorite fight experiences ever. Now I lost a decision to Hioki. So that wasn't cool because I knew it was one of those fights where I knew I could have. Chris, I'm sure you've had a few of these where you could beat the guy, but there was just that he had such a name behind him at the time that I was so afraid to pull a trigger on some things that I kind of let the fight happen instead of fighting.
Yeah,
and I'm sure you can relate to that somehow, but and then come to find out, this was the crazy part. So Shu's the one who got me the fight.
Shu Hirata.
Yes. So Shu had another partner in Japan because you kind of got to know back then, at least you had to know somebody in Japan to get to Japan because Japan doesn't like people who are not Japanese, so you kind of had to have an in to get there. And so Shu had a business partner that lived in Japan. So after the fight's over, we go to the after fight party and we're having a ball. I mean, this is my first time in Japan. I think Japan was just awesome. I loved it. That was like one of my goals set out. Once I started getting serious about fighting was I want to go to Japan. That's what was a goal of mine. And so when I was there, I was just having a blast. We were stopping at every ramen and udon place on every corner. We were just having a good time. So we're at this after fight party, just eating and drinking and having a good time. And Shu's business partner is bawling like a little baby in the corner. And I'm like, man, Strasser, what's going on here? And we're talking to Shu, like, hey, Shu, what's wrong with your buddy? Why is he crying? Like, this is a celebration. We're at an after fight party. Like, he should be here. Give him some drink. What's going on? He's like, well, this is what happened. The Yakuza had paid the judges that no matter what happens at the end of your fight, whether Hioki won or lost, that he was going to win that fight. No matter what, unless you killed that man, he was going to win that fight.
Wow.
And I'm just like, okay, well, he won. So what's this guy?
Yeah, so what?
About? Well, he caught wind of it and tried to have the judges changed. So then the Yaku was like, you're a dead man.
Oh,
I don't know how it ended up. I don't know what happened to the guy. That was the last I've ever seen of him. Maybe Mike Camp sent him a fish in the mail. I don't know. But,
Mike's their guy.
If I'm gonna be sticking my neck out for somebody, it's not gonna be in Japan. It's not gonna be a foreigner. You gotta let that ride.
Hey, by the way, did you make it out to Roppongi when you were out there?
No, we were in. We weren't in Tokyo. We were in
Yokohama.
No.
Osaka.
No.
Nagoya.
Keep going.
No.
Was it Nagoya? No.
Nagoya.
Yeah.
Which I actually liked a lot better than Tokyo.
You flew into Tokyo and you took the train to Nagoya.
I thought wasn't there an airport in Nagoya?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but did you do a 2-hour speed bullet train? It's a nice train ride. I don't
think so. I don't think it was that long. I thought a car picked us up. I could be wrong.
Okay, that's fine. That's cool.
That's
I
interesting.
like Roppongi. Roppongi is the place to be.
That's what I hear.
If you're a single guy.
Yeah, but Nagoya had that appeal too, because Nagoya, to me, you go there and you didn't run into Japanese people that knew English at all, right? And so like you'd walk into a bar and nobody even tried to approach you and stuff, and they weren't used to it. In Tokyo, they're used to gaijin, you know.
Well,
It
you
was cool.
couldn't get into most places in Nagoya.
That's the other part. Yeah,
like you try to go somewhere and they do the Yakuza standing outside doing this.
No gaijin. No gaijin. I heard that before. I'm like, huh? No gaijin.
One day. Like so. So we didn't go. We tried to go out to a bar and we couldn't find one that would let us in. So we went around.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
No, they don't like foreigners. No foreigners. No guys.
No.
Why? What's the theory behind
That's why you go to Roppongi, because they love all foreigners there, man. That was a bar district for people like me.
The only thing I'm going off of is Japan's a very homogenous country.
Racist.
There's a reason for that. You know, they don't stay homogenous, you know, for no reason. They like it. They I don't know. I don't want to delve too much into, you know, geopolitics at this point, but
you know, all I can tell you is I look up the racial makeup of Chinese and Japanese restaurants. Very few are outside of Asian. All I'm saying is it would be good to hire outside of your race. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. I know there's a lot of
I gotta go grab a charger real quick. You guys keep going.
He's going to cut a deuce. He's lying.
Yeah.
But
almost done, buddy. Almost done.
Here's the thing. If you're going to a Japanese restaurant and some 19-year-old white kid is back behind there making sushi, are you staying in that Japanese restaurant? I'm not. I'm turning around and walking out.
No, you're right. The thing about going to Japan too is, it's a different culture, but you are treated kind of like a superhero there. You know what I mean? It's like when they realize you're a fighter, then you become a cartoon character, and it's fun. Did you do that? Have that experience of doing the autographs and stuff?
Not that I recall. I don't, you know, because what was a show called Heat?
Yeah.
Heat. Yeah.
Oh, I don't think there was a whole lot of money behind it, so there wasn't a whole lot of like promoting behind it, you know.
Okay.
Like when you went out and fought in like Pride or these other shows, there's a lot of promoting, so they're really promoting you. I remember seeing. I still got it. There's like it was like a magazine, and there was my picture next to Hioki's picture, and that was like all the promoting that I seen. So it was. I'm pretty sure it was like a one and done show.
Yeah, I think they may have had a couple other ones, but there wasn't many. You know, there wasn't many. And, you know, based on, you know, what it is you're saying, it sounds like there's some nefarious influences that were kind of pushing, and, you know, the people that were a part of it were pushing back against them. And, you know, if they ended quick, you know, you could see who won that battle. I mean,
and I remember the way Shu explained it. He's like, there's good Yakuza and there's bad Yakuza, and this is bad Yakuza. So...
Yeah, it's just kind of like the tattoos give it away. You know what I mean? Like,
and I had a blast. I loved it. Like me and Strasser, we went around Nagoya. We're trying a bunch of different places, and you know, like ramen places and udon places, and then you know we're going into art. You ever been to an arcade in Japan?
Yes.
Yes,
in Nagoya.
I've never seen anything. It was like being in the future. You're like, what is going on here? Like we couldn't play those games, you know. But I was just like watching that. We walked around this thing, and I'm like, I don't even know what they're doing, but this is awesome. Or like a pachinko place, like you walk.
Pachinko's nuts. I didn't get that.
And it's like, man, I'm gonna have a seizure. I gotta leave before I have a seizure. There's you know, it's like way too much going on right now.
Yeah, I was in Nagoya with John Rankin.
Yeah. The Reverend, isn't he like the Reverend?
Dude, I've never been to Japan. I'm the only one in this conversation that's never been in Japan.
Go.
I love it there, man.
Yes.
It was fun. Yeah, the Reverend. So we're on the airplane, right? And they put on the movie, and the movie is, I don't know if you remember it. It was a movie called American Beauty, which is about like an older gentleman with his wife, and he kind of cheats on her with like a younger girl.
Trying to scoop some young girl.
Yeah. So
which is kind of real life, except for that younger girl's a boy.
But wait, so the Reverend is sitting there listening and watching the movie, and then when the theme of it starts to go down, he's got the headphones on, so he's screaming, "Hey, they're showing this freaking thing here in front of kids. There's kids on this airplane." And everybody can hear him, and he can't. You know, he's got the. I remember just being like, "Oh, I don't know him." You know?
He's a man of the cloth.
Man.
So Brian, if I had to pick, like, I mean, you've obviously you fought a lot of hard guys. Like, you had a hard road, and one of your opponents that for sure was kind of targeting you because they thought, oh, I just got to get this one name, and then I move on. Is Dustin Neese. You ended up fighting him twice.
So funny story about that. So that fight came up, and I didn't find this out till afterward. Is how he ended up picking to fight me again. So I had took another short notice fight against this half-ass fighter, Chris Tickle, and I lost the decision.
Damn.
And I got tired. I got tired, and even like watching the fight now, you could have almost gave it to me too, but I was tired. I couldn't do anything. I took it on less than a week notice and went down there and I lost the decision in his hometown. Whatever.
And he went on to the Ultimate Fighter from there, based on your name.
Yes. So they used me to get hit. Who knows if he drop out or if that was like their plan the whole time. Let's just get this guy to, Geraghty will fight him on a week. I don't know. So anyway, so apparently Dustin Neese, him and his training partner were there. And so after I beat Dustin that night, his training partner, we're in the elevator and he's like, man, I thought you sucked. I saw you fight Chris Tickle and I wanted to punch him right in his mouth. I'm like, I'm like, dude, I took that fight on like a fucking week notice. I'm not going to look good. And I'm like, whatever, and that's why
up a weight class too. Against Chris Tickle. I mean, Chris Tickle's a big dude. They picked
me off of my performance from a week notice fight against Chris Tickle.
So you beat Dustin with a triangle choke in 2008. And then in 2012, because like sometimes fights just kind of take up rent in somebody's head. Like you knew it didn't leave him because in 2012, you fight Indie MMA. I think that was Keith Palmer's event.
I don't think it was. I think it was. I remember the people, but
Jake O'Brien headlined.
Yeah, I was there for that one. I was part of it, but it wasn't Keith Palmer.
It wasn't, huh?
Eddie something was a matchmaker. Eddie
Marabella was the matchmaker.
Yeah. He was a matchmaker.
He's been around, man. Eddie Marabella's been around. He's been around a few blocks. I know who he is.
I don't know who show it was, but I just remember. That's who I dealt with was Eddie.
So you he's from Indianapolis, Dustin Neese, and you beat him in his hometown on a split decision.
Yeah.
How close was that fight?
It was kind of close. The only thing was, I was picking him apart on the feet, and that was clearly what won it. Is he was trying to box with me the whole fight because I remember he had just came back from. I don't know how long he was out there, but he was training at Uriah Faber's gym in California. And I remember he even put out a video of him boxing with Uriah Faber where the way they cut the video out, it made it look favorable toward Dustin. Like, hey, look at that. So I think he thought he was like some kind of like boxer from there. I don't know. And he tried to box me the whole fight, which was basically at point in my career was all my training at that point was boxing. Those were the only training partners I had at that point in my career. Dave's gym kind of fell apart. I was kind of running a gym in Waukegan. So I had students, but I didn't have really solid training partners. So my training partners were boxers that were there. I had a boxing gym that was below us. And so that's where my training partners. So I was doing a lot of boxing at the time. So, and that was basically what our fight was a boxing match. And I was just ahead of them, a step ahead of them most of the fight.
Yeah, I think that was the Ultimate Fighter's nice, but when you got two wins against a guy that obviously went on to the UFC afterward, it's a nice little bow tie on a career, or not nice, little bow on top of a career. It's nice.
Yeah.
So let's go through Miguel. We gotta kind of hit him with the names. There is some absolute all-stars coming out of Wisconsin that we haven't even touched on yet.
Yeah.
Miguel, would you like to start?
Take it away, Mike.
Pat O'Malley.
Oh,
One of my favorite people.
Miguel, you knew I was going to say that name.
I love Pat.
How could you not? So why don't you encapsulate Pat O'Malley for the viewers at home?
Pat O'Malley is what do you think of Pat O'Malley? If the only way I can explain Pat O'Malley really is Dropkick Murphys. If you wanted to explain Pat O'Malley, you explain him he's Dropkick Murphys is what he is. He's a punk rock Irish dude with a bunch of tattoos. That's crazy. That'll do anything. You ask Pat to go into war with you, he'll go into war with you.
Yeah, he was a really good manager for everybody else except himself. And had he managed himself like he did everyone else, he would have made a UFC appearance. He took a lot of hard fights. That were unnecessary.
Pat and I kind of were like in similar paths. Well, I didn't run a show, but I was kind of like always like the trainer, which I think Pat was kind of in that role too, where we never really went to, all right, I should go find somebody to train me. You know what I mean? I didn't really get like a coach until I stopped fighting and I started training at a jiu-jitsu school up in Wauwatosa, up in Milwaukee, in the Milwaukee area. I was always kind of like training myself, especially towards the end of my career. So I was finding my own training partners. I was making my own workouts, and
it makes it tough, brother. It's a tough world.
It's very tough because I didn't know what I was doing. I was just doing what I thought was best, but I had some ideas of what to do from certain people I train with. Like, I think the biggest awakening for me of how to train myself was when I went and but I stayed with the Diaz brothers for a couple weeks out in Stockton. And that was kind of like a wake-up call on how to train. And because
was this after the Ultimate Fighter or before? Was this after the Ultimate Fighter or
after
before?
I met Nate because obviously he was on the Ultimate Fighter. So we became buddies, and I went and stayed with those guys for a couple weeks after the Ultimate Fighter. And that's when I learned a lot about dieting and training outside of just doing MMA. And how to train. It was those Nick and Nate are probably the two hardest workers I've ever met in my entire life when it comes to anything. Those guys literally eat, sleep, and live fighting. And that's like from the time they awake to the time they go to sleep. Everything is based on fighting. They get what they eat, their work, everything. It was the most eye-opening experience I've ever had in my life. And I train with a lot of guys. I mean, you just said it. Wisconsin has like the who's who of, MMA guys who've been in the UFC and this and that. But I've never trained like I did when I was out there. It's just an eye-opening experience. And, Nate, I remember invited me to like, why don't you come move out here and train with us? And I didn't because I had stuff going on back in Wisconsin. And I almost wish I would have, because I think, who knows, my career could have went in a totally different direction than it did. Yeah. Because the way they trained, it was almost ridiculous at first. It would have been hard to get used to. For instance, I got there on a Friday night. They picked me up from the airport. There was a kind of a really funny story. Nate had gotten a sponsor from his like local Honda dealer. So they gave him like this new Honda Accord. So I'm expecting Nate to pick me up in his Honda Accord from the airport. And him and his buddy picked me up in like his buddy's, I don't know, it was like a Suburban or something. So I'm like, Nate, where's your Honda? I thought you just got this new car. I thought you'd be excited to drive. He's like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. I'm like, tell me what? He's like, yeah, my car got shot up at my house the other night. I was like, what? I'm like, wait, where are we going? I'm like, where are we going? He's like, yeah, no, it's cool, man. It's cool. They came and arrested the guy, my neighbor, and he's like this huge, his neighbor was like a drug kingpin in Stockton. He had some like gang out there. He's like a huge kingpin, so I don't know what kind of drugs they were selling, but his rivals came and tried to take him out, and Nate's car and his buddy's cars and his house got caught in the crossfire. And So this
That
is
happens
where I'm
all the
gonna
time
stay
in
for
Indy.
2 weeks. So I'm just like, this doesn't seem like fun. So anyway, I get there on the Friday night. We go and do their Friday night workout, which was like sparring. And then they said, tomorrow is our rest day. We're gonna go to the park and have like a relaxing day. Well, the relaxing day is a lot different from mine and your relaxing day. It starts out with a 30-mile bike ride, followed up by a 10-mile jog.
10 miles?
Or run, I should say, not even jog. I'm like, and then they go after that's over and they jump in this lake at this park and they swim across this lake and back.
Yeah,
And
keep in mind, they also train triathlon, man.
That's all of them right there. You just said
they
it.
signed me up for a triathlon. I don't know how to swim besides swimming in the local pools in Kenosha, Wisconsin. I almost died. They're like,
How long was the swim?
signed you up for a triathlon tomorrow. I was like, what's a triathlon? You'll find out tomorrow.
How
I
long was the
almost
swim? Do you
died.
remember?
Huh?
How long was the swim that you had to do? 500 meters?
I did the sprint, so it was like a mile swim, I think.
Oh no.
Here's
Miles.
the bad part. Okay, now you think you can swim until you actually have to swim a distance.
The ocean.
So
You almost
I
drowned. There's no way.
when this race starts, I get out there in a sprint, swim. I'm like, I'm gonna try to win this race. I get about 20 yards out and I die. I come back to shore and I'm like, you guys, I come back to shore. I'm like, I can't breathe with this wetsuit on. They're all laughing and cracking up in their videotape this whole thing. They're like, dude, you're in a race right now. I'm like, I can't fucking breathe. I'm like, I've never worn a wetsuit before. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. They're like, just get back out there. And they like throw me back in the water. I backstroke a mile because I'm backfloating a dead man's float a mile.
So you're in
Here's
last
the worst
place.
part. Since I'm doing the dead man's float, I'm not looking where I'm going. I go about a quarter mile past the fucking buoy where I'm supposed to turn. The lifeguard comes up to me and his buddy's like, the shore's back that way. I'm just like, son of a bitch. So I start the race with like the youngest crowd. I end the race with the old ladies. That's how bad it was. But I finished it. So I never rode a road bike before either. So I'm scared to death once you're like going downhill. If you're doing like 30 miles an hour and you're clipped into these pedals, I've never done anything like this. I'm scared to death. So everybody's pedaling as fast as they can. I'm braking on this hill to slow down. Like this is way too fast, you know. It was very interesting. But like I said, their rest day was a 30-mile bike ride and a 10-mile run, followed up by a barbecue of Boca burgers.
Man.
You know how pissed I was after doing all that and then have to eat Boca burgers on a grill? I was not happy.
Nice.
That sounds like the Diaz brothers to me, though.
That sounds like a good time.
No weed.
was.
Was there weed? Was there weed? Are they legit?
Oh, Nick nonstop smoked weed. Nate didn't smoke a lot of weed. He would a little bit, but Nick was like nonstop. Now, where I came from, all my friends growing up smoked weed. My older brother smoked a lot of weed, and I thought my older brother smoked a lot of weed. When we went to Vegas and he hung out with Nick, my brother came back and said he smokes too much weed. I thought my brother smoked a lot of weed. I couldn't hang with them.
So they take their weed smoking like they're training. In other words, it's like just
Yes,
over the
very
top.
serious.
Okay, very
Different
nice.
You're gonna go hard.
So Miguel, like he mentioned Shu Hirata earlier, obviously a friend of ours. And Shu actually had a couple Japanese guys staying at Strasser with Strasser's gym. One of them is a 50 Fight Club member, Yusuke Kamigawa, who's got about 60, 70 fights himself.
He's got that many fights? So
He's got a lot. It's either him or Daisuke. Which one of those two have got a shitload of fights?
Well, I don't remember his real name, but there was 13.
That's Daisuke.
Everybody called him 13.
That's Daisuke. I think Daisuke's the one. I might be confused on that. I think you might be right.
Yeah. He had a lot of fights, so he's probably a 50 Fight Club. Socho, who is Yusuke Kawagama, I wouldn't bet that he had that many.
No, I don't think he does. I think it's Daisuke. It's 13. I made a mistake.
And then the other guy was what's his name that fought in UFC that actually took Strasser's last name. even after his last fights in the UFC, only like maybe a year ago, he still had Strasser in his name being announced in the UFC. So Strasser had that big of effect on this guy who lived at his gym for a few months.
Dude, what's his name?
Strasser.
Kichi Strasser. it was Kichi. I can't remember what his real last name was because he went by Strasser. But
so none of these guys, they fought on one of my cards in Chicago too. None of these guys spoke any English at all, like as in zero. Yeah. And they're stuck in Racine, Wisconsin with these guys that are just absolute Vikings.
So here's a good story. So Socho stayed the longest. That's Yusuke Kawigama. He stayed the longest. He stayed for almost 2 years, I think. So he started to pick up English, and then we'd bring him out to hang out with us when we'd go out.
Where would he live at?
He lived at Strasser's house.
Okay.
Or like he would stay at Strasser's, Jamil's, or whoever would take him in. You know, he was kind of just like, he was a Ronin when it came to living. He just went wherever.
Was he a good workout partner?
Huh?
Was he a good workout partner?
Yeah. He was a black belt in judo. So he was good with teaching us takedowns, and we tried to teach him boxing and stuff like that. But he was I loved that guy. He was a really cool guy. It was really good experience. Having, I don't know if it was a good experience for him, but it was a good experience for me having him here. I really enjoyed it. But so one night we're all going out in Milwaukee. There's like some MMA awards show going on at some club in Milwaukee. And so we're all going to meet at Sergio's place because Sergio lived right outside of Milwaukee in like Oak Creek at the time. And
so you're talking about WEC fighter Sergio Gomez. Yes.
So Sergio Gomez is pro Second Amendment, is saying that very conservatively. You walk into his house and there's a loaded gun under every pillow. You go open up the toilet seat to take a piss. There's a loaded shotgun.
He's got drop guns. He's got drop guns.
Just in case.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Just in case. So in Japan, guns are illegal. Some rich people have them, but basically you don't have guns. But airsoft pistols are very popular in Japan. So just to give you a little context to the story, a little backstory. So Socho is sitting in Sergio's apartment. Sergio just got done cleaning his Glock. Now, Sergio, if you ask Sergio, there's no point in having a gun's not good unless it's loaded. So there's no point in having a gun that's not loaded. So he's got his Glock loaded that he just got done cleaning, sitting on his couch, on the armchair of his couch. Now, Socho, who's never seen a real gun before in his life, picks the gun up, not knowing it's a gun. He thinks it's an airsoft pistol. He points it at Jamil's head. Jamil starts freaking out because Jamil knows it's a real gun and is loaded. So he's like, no. So then Socho points the gun onto Sergio's couch cushion and fires it off. Sergio lives on the second floor of an apartment building.
Ooh.
Sergio freaks out. He runs downstairs to his neighbors.
You got to leave.
And
he just leave.
He plays stupid, like, did you guys hear that? And his neighbor's like, yeah, I heard something. He's like, is everybody okay? And his neighbor's like, yeah, we're fine. What was that? He's like, yeah, I don't know. I heard it too.
Oh, Mike, it was from their apartment and not his.
Yeah. Well, you guys
what are you guys doing down here?
You guys,
it's either that or you got to go. You just leave.
You got a Japanese guy upstairs. You guys need to keep it down. Show some respect to the foreigners. Come on. So,
what?
Socho's crying. He's scared to death. He has this call Shu. He's telling Shu he wants to go home, not home to like Strasser's house, home to Japan. So he's just told.
So you guys
he's dishonored himself.
Shu. You guys had to translate to Shu what took place.
Yes. So here's the only good part. The only good part is Sergio didn't have a full metal jacket in there. So if it was a full metal jacket, it would have went through into the first floor. Might have hit somebody down there. So that was the only good part about this story, about the shooting story. Now the story gets better though. So Socho's crying and he wants to go home. We're about to go out and have fun. So we're like, this ain't happening. You're not going home. Nobody died. We're fine. So Sergio's got a bottle of tequila, the good stuff. So I start feeding it to Socho. After a few shots, he relaxes. We go out. We have a good time. We have such a good time, and Socho's so relaxed. By the time we get back to Sergio's apartment, we're having Socho take pictures with Sergio's AR.
This ain't so bad.
Yeah. So, all is well. Nobody got hurt, thank God.
That's nice. That's a good one. Hey, can I toss out a name? Because I got a feeling we're gonna go back. We mentioned him already.
Okay.
There.
Rob Roy.
Yes.
Hey.
Why does he have two names?
Hey, well, here's the thing: is I was looking it up while we're doing this. There was a time where you could look up Rob Roy on Sherdog and Sharon Leggett on Sherdog, and it was two separate people. But it's no longer the case. They've combined them now, and it's Sharon, Rob Roy Leggett. So I give Sherdog a little credit. They did some work, but this fella here, he was one of those guys like in the old boxing days where it's like, hey, I got knocked out, in Oklahoma, and I drove in a van 3 days later, and I fought in Nebraska. You know what I mean?
So he got the nickname Rob Roy because Strasser couldn't pronounce Sharon Leggett. So Strasser's like, I'm going to call you Rob Roy.
Okay. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But he's got to be an interesting character too. He was a pretty good natural fighter, but
he was he's different. He's a different kind of person, and he was one of those fighters that kind of, I know his last fight, big fight in WC didn't, but he was one of those guys that rose to the occasion. He rose to the level of opponent he was fighting. So especially if he was fighting somebody who was like, had the accolades of like a wrestler. Oh, this guy's a college wrestler. This guy did this. Rob Roy wasn't having that. So Rob Roy wasn't going to go in there and beat him with boxing or with jiu-jitsu. Rob was going to go in there and wrestle him because he wasn't going to take that this dude, if you told it, Rob Roy, hey, this guy's a better wrestler than you, that was like Rob Roy's goal was to take this guy down. He didn't care if he won the fight. He just wanted to take the guy down. So, and he did it. Like he fought and he beat, the Carney, Nick Lentz. I'm sure you guys heard of Nick Lentz. He had a pretty long-standing UFC career, was a good wrestler for Minnesota. And Rob Roy fought him up in Minnesota and out-wrestled him.
Wow. So
Rob Roy, like I said, he rose to the occasion of his opponent, and
he and Jay Estrada had a hell of a fight.
I don't know if I was there for that. I don't remember that.
It was legit.
Okay. But Rob Roy was
he took a split decision loss to Anthony Pettis.
And he won that fight. If you watch it, he won that fight. That was a hometown deal. Rob Roy was taking him down. Nothing was it was boring, but he won.
All right.
He controlled the fight. And Rob Roy, Pettis' career took off from there because Rob Roy was a WC veteran. So that kind of, I guess maybe it didn't, but that's when Pettis started getting big.
Miguel, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Why did Rob Roy, how did he exit Strasser's gym? What was the makeup behind all of that? There you go. You hear that? You hear that pause, Chris? That means something. That means
trying
something
to figure
good's
out how to
coming.
word this thing.
That means something good's coming.
I don't know exactly.
It had to do with the Tap Out TV show. So go ahead. You say it instead of me.
Well, that's the thing. It's like I don't remember or know exactly what happened. It was somewhere he felt slighted by Strasser.
Man, all right, here you go. Hey, Chris. All right.
Yo,
I'm not a part of that gym. Okay, I've never even rolled at that gym. So he gets featured on the Tap Out TV show. And there's equipment that's coming up missing out of Strasser's gym. And they can't figure out where it's going. So at the Tap Out TV show, Rob Roy says, yeah, I don't really have a gym. I just train in my backyard. And he's got his own gym in his backyard with all of the equipment from Dave's gym.
Kind of a mystery. Oh, wow.
How close am I? How far off or how close am I, Brian?
I'm
Very close. Thank you.
deny.
There you go. Thank you. I appreciate that. There we go. There we go.
doesn't sound like something Rob Roy would do. But I thought it was, what was it? Was it like something like Rob?
They've had a lot of
Strasser was like out of town for like a fight, wasn't it? Fuck, I'd have to ask. I thought it was something like Dave was out of town, but like the tap out guys were like, "Hey, we're going to use this for the show, so don't tell Rob you're not going to be there." And they kind of put that into the story, like Rob shows up to this fight and he doesn't have a corner.
And then they kind of badmouth Dave in there as well. Yeah, they smashed Dave. He's got a coach that doesn't even show up. Yeah, dude,
I think it might have been something like that. If I remember.
And then Mask could always go, "That's
and I remember
street." He'd always like to say, "That's street."
Yeah.
Like, that's so street.
And there was always somebody telling a joke because he was always laughing at something.
Yeah.
But
it was weird.
Yeah, I remember it was something along those lines. I think there were a few things like Rob Roy had a different kind of personality.
So does Dave.
Yeah, but I don't think it was. I don't remember. I remember there were a few fights between Rob and some of the other guys at the gym where it was just like somebody said something. The funniest one was this was when Rob was fairly new to the gym. He didn't really know a whole lot. He had wrestled in high school, so that was like all the training he had. And he was rolling with one of our heavyweights, and our heavyweight put him in a triangle. Now Rob Roy was, when he started training with us, he was heavier, but not heavyweight heavy. He was just like kind of like, well, I haven't worked out in like a few years heavy, you know.
He's like 85, 90.
Yeah. So he got in a triangle choke, which he had never been in a triangle choke before. So he didn't, nobody taught him how to escape a triangle choke. So what does Rob Roy do? He's a wrestler. He picks a guy up and slams him on the ground. Well, our heavyweight didn't take too kind to that. So he got up and he might have punched him or something. So Rob Roy got up and grabbed the dumbbell and goes to throw it at the heavyweight. And we had to grab him and split him up. And so it kind of got off to a rocky start because he was new,
wow.
He wasn't giving an inch. That's all that tells me.
And there was a few sparring sessions that kind of ended that way,
where like foreign objects came into play.
No, but it was just like, a lot of us, we like as Strassers, we sparred really hard. Just kind of how it was. We like what during fight class, it was crazy. The first gym I started training at was Strasser. It wasn't a gym. It was half of a house that was a flower shop that these people used, and Dave bought it. And the flower shop half of the house was the gym. So during the summer, it was a sauna in there. And when it came to fight class, you came inside and then the doors got locked. Nobody was coming in and nobody was leaving. And like, I would get more nervous for that than fights because you spar with everybody. You spar with Ron Faircloth, you spar with Ben, you spar with everybody, and we did the Shark Tanks where you're in the middle and then you're just getting the shit kicked out of you. Somebody always went to the hospital when it was over. You either were knocked out or somebody got something broken. Someone's going to the hospital. So, we tapered it down later on, but that's how it went for years. And Rob Roy wasn't cool with that type of sparring. He didn't like that. So when people would spar Rob like that, it didn't end well. Where it never ended well. But Rob Roy would take a lot of that like personally, where we wouldn't take it personally. Yeah, it didn't end well, like someone was going to the hospital, but we didn't take it personally. You know what I mean?
Well, at a Shark Tank, no one wins. Like everybody leaves there thinking, like, man, I had a really bad practice because at some point you're tired and you're just bringing in fresh bodies. So I mean, everyone takes an ass kicking at some point during a Shark Tank.
Oh well, for sure. And I don't know. Looking back on it, I don't know if that was like the best thing to do because you did leave that Shark Tank thinking I just got my ass kicked, so was that the best thing? I don't know. Like I said, you hear guys training now like that don't even spar, that are fighting the UFC and you're like, were we doing this wrong? You know,
man, I think that was like just an old Midwestern thing where it was, you might not have got better, but it was about being mentally tough. You know, I mean, you were tougher afterwards. And that's all I think all the guys from the Midwest are tough as nails. They weren't the most technical fighters, but you're going to be gritty and dirty and go in there and pound somebody. That's all I think we had from the Midwest. I mean, you fight those guys from California, and they were better technical, but I mean, we'd win some because we were gritty. That's all I think. That's why.
You look at the Midwest fighters and the difference between Midwest fighters and California fighters. You see a California fighter in the UFC, even today, you know, he's got a record of 3-0. You see a Midwest fighter in the UFC, it's his first UFC fight, but the guy's, you know, has 50 some odd fights. You know,
18
so it's like, what's going on here?
Brian Ebersol.
Like,
I mean, it's just.
He was a 50 Fight Club member by the time he hit the UFC.
Who's that?
Yeah. Brian Ebersol.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know?
So,
all right,
most of us were. Strasser didn't have 50 fights because Strasser had a lot of time off when he hurt his neck, but he was towards the end of his career. Agent Serrano was toward the end of his career. Shawnee Carter toward the end of his career. Chris, you got in late in your career. You know, everybody got in.
Chris, you really did. You got in early, but they wouldn't let you back in. Like they wouldn't let you back in.
Not for a while.
Yeah. It was like a Midwest thing. And you know, like California, like even like East and West Coast, like whenever we interview guys from those coasts, we always kind of mention there seems to be kind of like a nerf coating around their 4 and 5. And we're not saying they're not talented, but they haven't really earned their way there yet. You know, like unlike a Midwest guy,
a lot
like
of
a Josh Neer.
Yeah, but a lot of it also had to do with marketing. You know, marketing a blue collar guy who doesn't have a whole lot to say isn't as sexy as marketing, you know, some crazy dude like, you know, Nick Diaz from California. These guys are going to say some really crazy stuff. And, you know, we didn't say nothing crazy. We just said, yeah, we train. I have respect for my opponent. We're going to go out there and fight.
I'm going to punch that guy in the face.
Yeah. So
I think it's also
look at it from a marketing standpoint. There wasn't a whole lot of reason to bring a lot of Midwest guys in because they
had to earn their spot. You know, we had to earn our spots.
Yeah.
Well, and the FaceTime is also really important. And where are all the events really taking place? Vegas and California.
Yeah.
So those people are constantly in, you know, the decision makers' faces, which is incredibly important as well.
Yeah.
So another like legendary name that came through the Strasser gym, you know, by way of different country was Carina Damm.
She got famous fighting a prostitute on Dave's show. Comments of Mike Davis.
I don't know what you're talking about. So you had Carina Damm, like, and did Rodrigo also join her?
No.
And do you want me to expand on that? He just throws something. I'm going. All right.
So we're all excited, me especially, because I was probably the most into jiu-jitsu out of everybody at the gym. I love because I had been training with Brennan, those guys. I knew what jiu-jitsu was. I loved it. I wanted to learn more of it. We didn't have a black belt. Every other gym had a black belt. If they were a name gym, they had a black belt teaching jiu-jitsu. I was like the jiu-jitsu instructor, and I was like a blue belt, somewhat purple belt. And, you know, so I was so excited. And then I hear, oh, we're not bringing Rodrigo in. So Dave, why aren't we bringing come on, what are we doing? We got to get this guy here. We got to learn some stuff. We can't. Well, why not? Well, apparently he's out in Japan stealing equipment. I'm like, okay, so what? Well, we don't want him to come here and steal. Well, what's he going to do? He's from Brazil. We lock him in the basement. We beat the shit out of him if he steals something. Let's take him for his knowledge. You know, but they wasn't happening. So we got the consolation prize of his sister, Carina. She hated it here. Hated Wisconsin. This Brazilian Barbie, you know, comes from Brazil to Wisconsin in February and just hates her life.
So what happens is no one would fight her. No one would fight her. So Dave calls me up. I mean, Geraghty said something that was not true earlier involving myself.
It's hard to recollect at this point.
And I think I've got to correct that statement. So Dave calls me up and he's like, we got no one. So I'm from the south side of Chicago. So I start calling my contacts on the south side of Chicago. I start calling like boxing guys because MMA, no one would touch her. So I get to Robert Middleman and he's a famous boxing guy. Google search him because he was banned from the sport of boxing. So if anybody would have like some sort of shady thing where we can just find someone, get him there. There's no commission in Wisconsin at the time. It's a guy that has been banned from a sport that's almost impossible to get kicked out of. And he hooked me up with somebody out of Milwaukee did you ever see the Love Boat back in the day?
Of course.
That captain hat that they were wearing. The guy shows up wearing like the Love Boat captain hat, and he's got like 2 or 3 like women with him that
bro, I know that guy. when I did pro boxing, the guys from Milwaukee would come down, and they were the B side always. They were like one Reggie thing. What was the guy's name? Donnie Pendleton. He had like a whole crew. And I remember they were I remember that's when I first was on boxing. Like I thought MMA was messed up. Boxing's way worse. And I remember the guy in the captain hat was always there bringing the B side, man. And they would be fighting over stuff. They'd have the same shirts on from the week before. It was crazy. I know who you're talking about.
Chris, this guy had, I think it was a streetwalker. I think he literally hit the strip, picked up a prostitute, and brought her to the show. And I got guys like Geraghty, Pat O'Malley, Ron Faircloth giving me the 3rd degree. Like, how do you know?
Pain.
She'll fight.
I think she really liked you. She might have gave you a freebie. Who knows?
They were asking me, how do you know prostitutes in Milwaukee?
Don't worry
about
it.
Know?
Don't worry about it.
Mind your business. Yeah, right.
Hey, she's here to fight. Shut up. I know that guy. Yeah. Love both captain that.
Did Carina win? Because that might still be up in the air here.
No, she lost a split decision. It was really bad.
Yeah, it was like a 30-second fight. I think the chick started tapping after the first punch. Like it was in and out. It was pretty bad. So we've been Miguel? How deep are we at a time?
It's been about 3 hours.
Yeah, we're going into 3 hours. We're at about 2 hours and 20 minutes of tape.
All right, let's close. Let's close with this.
I was supposed to pick my daughter up like 2 hours ago. This ain't gonna be good.
So let's close with this. WEC 40. Jamil Masood is fighting Rafiel Assunção. Brian Geraghty is cornering. Him and Strasser used to, like, if they saw something really nice in the background, they would like grapple and do things just to like knock it over or destroy it. And it was like, it was absolutely intentional. I saw some video footage involving Mike Brown of you guys grappling backstage. Would you mind taking us through what happened?
Strasser and I have our technique of the week videos where they never end well. They always end. Strasser would always try to demonstrate like a technique, like an escape, but Strasser's very claustrophobic. So you put him in a choke and he goes out like that. So he was trying to demonstrate a head escape, and he passes out. And you know, when you pass out, you don't really have control over your body. So he kind of wakes up for a second, puts the poster down, he goes back out. It was bad.
No. So essentially what happens is Geraghty throws him in like a rear naked choke. Strasser pretends like he's drowning. And then he sees the poster, hits Geraghty. Geraghty lets go, and he just destroys this WEC poster where there's a woman that's working for the company. She just can't believe what's taking place there. And Dave's like, hey, I passed out. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. You know, it's completely not my fault. So they're backstage just like destroying like really expensive WEC like standouts and stuff like that. And Mike Brown's like trying to get ready for like his fight. And he's like, what the hell is this? And, you know, Strasser's trying to say, hey, man, it's not my fault. I'm sorry. I got choked out. You know, it just destroyed a whole bunch of stuff backstage.
We didn't do ourselves any favors when we went to those shows. That was a great thing about Strasser that I liked. I liked bringing Dave into my corner, not because of his cornering, because he would take my mind.
He keep you relaxed, brother.
Dave, huh?
He'd keep you relaxed and not focus on the fight, you know?
You could tell Dave to do anything and he would do it. He'd be like, there'd be a table of water. And he'd be like, Dave, go knock over that table. And he wouldn't hesitate or question it. Like, are you sure about this? He would just do it. And so I loved it. Everybody else hated it. Like Jamil hated it. Sergio hated it. The Aguilars hated it. I, for one, I loved it.
I liked it. I like it too.
Remember,
a table full of water. If Strasser's there, it's 100% getting tipped over.
You guys,
100%.
Dog, when Dave painted his face like a cat, and every time a fighter got announced, he would pop out as the fighter was walking out, and like he was a cat, like scratching into the air. And then he got yelled at to not do it anymore, and they made him get out of the camera angle, and he stood up on one of those prop crates. And the crate busted in, and it was so loud, it sounded like a bomb exploded. And this is while you're trying to shoot a production, and Strasser's got his face painted like a cat. And I was dying. Everybody with us was so pissed. I was loving it. I was laughing so hard. It was like the coolest. I thought it was hilarious. Nobody else thought it was funny that was in our group except for me. Thompson thought it was funny, but everybody else was like really upset about it.
Yeah, no,
that's what you gotta love about Dave. He'll do it for that one guy who thinks it's funny.
That's it. Yeah.
At the Bodog thing, what we're talking about is like, you know, there's a production shoot, there's models there, and like the models have like a makeup like area where they go get touched up and stuff. And I walk by and Dave is sitting in the model's chair getting made up, but you know, getting made up like a tiger. And I'm like, what the hell? You know, there's a modeling crew and Dave, what does Dave do? Rah, you know, I mean, yeah. So yeah, that happened. The other one I remember is you guys doing, Dave was gonna demo at a rule. We did a fight show here and Dave and Brian came down to do help with the Mike may have even been down here too.
I was there. Yeah.
But you know, so they're going to help with the judging and the bringing of the fighters out and all that sort of stuff. And Dave, as a UFC veteran, and Brian are going to demonstrate a headlock escape. And Brian applies the headlock on Dave, and Dave struggles. And he can't escape. He couldn't do it. So he's knocking over tables and stuff like that. Unbelievable, man.
Dude, you know, it's the first time you see it, you're like, what the hell? What is this? but like the 8th or 9th or 10th time, because what he would always do is Dave would show the Kimura and bury like someone's face in his ass, and he would just kind of like so everyone would see like him, or they would be having their ass in his face. Like it wasn't like
his Kimura's escape was by your nuts. So you put the Kimura and his escape would knock you by your nuts and lift the air. But
breaking up there.
Part about that, but what Miguel was talking about in Costa Rica is they had Strasser and me as judges. So, like I said, I would tell Dave to do. I was always like the best at telling Dave what to do, and then he would do it. So I put this in Dave's head, and he did it before every fight. And I don't know if you guys seen this. So Dave and I were judges, and we were on those kind of seats that like you boost up on. You know, you hit the air-filled seats, you boost yourself up, right? So I talked Dave into doing this. Every time the judge would get ready for a fight, he pointed at all the judges, or the ref would get ready for it. He'd say, "Judge ready, judge ready." So every time he pointed at Dave, Dave would hit his air release thing, so his seat would go down. So when it would look like this, the ref would like, "Are you ready?" The ref would see this. Disappear from the site because he was letting the air out of his seat. What the fuck is going on here?
Hello?
all right.
He's gone.
Yeah. Wow, we're having some audio issues again, but Chris, why don't you take us out of here, man?
Well, hey, man, this has been a lot of fun. Brian, some great stories. Thank you very much for sharing with us. And there's probably going to be a part 2. We got to get more from you because too much to go on there. I mean, we got a lot to cover. I know. I mean, we'll have another session. So thank you guys for paying attention, and see you guys next time.
Thanks, brother. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, y'all.
Good to see you again, bro.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.